Hello,
Hello?
esteemed listeners.
Jinx.
You got me, and now I owe you soda. They say, God, that was like do people still say that? I probably not. I'm old.
I hear the much more depraved version from me and my
Oh
friends.
fuck.
Jinx, you owe me a blowjob. That's what I get
Oh
from me and my friends. So,
no.
yeah. Well,
Mine
I
was
guess,
schoolyard
or
appropriate. So.
actually nowadays, the kids might just say based to that because the gay jokes are actually nowadays like very normal. Like I've
Yep.
noticed in Gen Z especially, like gay jokes, like where it used to be, I feel like in previous generations it was like, oh, you're gay. Well, it's like nowadays it's like guy friends will be like, yeah, I'm gay. So what? I'll suck your dick, bro. That's like the thing now. And I find it kind of funny because me and my friends are the same way. So
It's like a long societal game of gay chicken.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Anyway, that is how we're
Just
starting
like
this episode,
Ichigo and
apparently.
Renji. See, guys, I can connect this to Bleach too. Just like Ichigo and Renji.
I was about to say, like, this is how the podcast is starting, isn't it? All right. Anyway, so before we start, this is a question more posed to the audience in general. I expect like, well, no, there were some other commenters talking about some of the other novels and stuff, but like, I don't know, Radman and Askin are, I really appreciate their comments always. Like, I'm not gonna put them on screen. The bigger ones, at least. There's a couple of one of each I want to mention, but it's like because they're so big, I don't even know if they're fitting. Like I literally have to stitch them together in Paint so that I can create an image to put on screen, and I don't even know if it's readable. Like just go read those comments. They're really long. They're just so dense. Like I was reading it, I just felt like I was getting stun locked because I was just kept hitting. Like
Yeah.
that's neat. That's neat. That's neat. It's just getting fucking like punched in the face like 5 times in a row. Like it's great. I love it.
I'll say this, guys. Keep the comments coming. One thing, for instance, Radman's comment specifically when he starts getting into the different espadas and what they
Yes, I was gonna
represent
bring that one up.
in conjunction with Aizen. Like for instance, I stopped reading that because I was like, you know what? Because I know Crafts, you're going to make a video about this and stuff too. I'd like
Mhm.
to read this when you come up with the video as like supplementary. So I'm going to actually go back. Some of these comments I'm probably going to go back to in the future, especially if I want to make a Bleach video. They're always
Oh,
going to be here.
100%.
So even if I like skim through it and I don't really remember it, I'll probably come back to most of these comments anyway. Because there's a lot of really good stuff. You guys continue to impress me. Yeah, you at Bleach community, just you guys are like actually, I don't know, you're like the Einsteins of the consumer manga consumers.
It's
For sure.
amazing how much a chip on your shoulder will just, and spite will drive you, right? Because I feel like Bleach has its own,
Yeah.
more specifically than One Piece and Naruto, just people just shit on Bleach. And it's really sad that Bleach, but I feel like that has driven people to just be like, no, it's good. I have to understand it even better because it is really deep. There's so much going on. But anyway, before I
Yeah,
get
it's
to the
true.
comments, basically the question, HotBoySpicy linked me a big folder of Bleach supplemental material, which has like the volume poems, like and compilations of the volume drawings. That's really fucking awesome. Like and the covers and just like a bunch of like one shots and novels and it's just really
Provided
nice
by
to have.
Radman, by the way. He gave me
Thank
that,
you.
and I found it
I
really
was
good
sort of
craft.
setting
So
you up to answer that question. So awesome.
yeah,
Thank you. But yeah, basically the question
once
is
again,
because I
thanks
so
to Radman.
I've talked about our like what to summarize. Part of the reason we wanted to talk about Bleach is because like we want to do content. You want to make a 1,000 Year Blood War video. I want to make like 3 videos now. And so part of the discussion is to to reread, understand Bleach, and get that better understanding so we can make these potential videos. So with Camp Fear and World, that's just the one of this extra Bleach content. That one is the novel that I've heard the most about. It's been officially released. I actually own it. I'm familiar with the author. He's done some other good stuff that I like, and I feel like from what I've heard, it adds quite a bit to the characters and just the setting and story of Bleach. So my question is, with all the other supplemental content, thinking about our video ideas with like, you want to make a video on any specific topics or just a general video on the 1,000 Year Blood War, like to narrow it down any, or if you have, like, I guess.
No, I guess
Nope. Okay.
if I do plan to narrow it down, that'll come to me when I actually am reading the arc.
Makes sense. Makes
In
sense.
this. Yeah.
Because I've already explained my Aizen Arenkar video. My 1,000 Year Blood War one is specifically talk about the Yuvok fight and explaining how everybody's like character arcs and basically talking about how the mechanics of the fight work in regards to like Yuobak and like Orihime's healing the sword. The silver arrow is probably going to be a whole section. Hashwalth's abilities, like basically the Tsukishima and his like basically talk about how everyone's character arc, Aizen and Ichigo, works into defeating Yuobak. And then of course the toxic masculinity video. So which I right now I feel like it's I'm gonna bring up a bunch of characters, but I feel like Orihime and Chad are probably like two of the more focal ones. So but I guess my question is related to both, like, is it good and is it relevant to our video ideas? What supplemental content is most worth going into aside from the ones we're already planning on, like as in Can't Fear Your Own World and the Burn the Witch and Hell Arc ones. So because I'm just seeing, like, we already read the Tatsuki and Ulquiorra shorts, one shots. The let me reread things like loneliness for Tatsuki and not be but be for Ulquiorra. But I see like Spirits Are Forever with You, Death Save the Strawberry, We Do Not Always Love You, Nestle Tonight, Beginnings of the Revive of Tomorrow. So I guess those are the ones that I'm thinking of. But so yeah, if any of those are specifically worth reading, because I might just read them anyway. But like, basically the question is like, are we reading it in a podcast discussion, or are they like for us to peruse at our own leisure later? Because if they're specifically relevant to our video topics or even just mine, like I'd like to know. So yeah, I'm just posing that question out there. If anyone who has gone through them all happens to know if they help.
Yeah, guys, I've never even read a One Piece or Naruto novel, so this is going to be a big leap for me if we even read one. So, which we are. We're at least going to read Can't Fear Your Own World. 3 even, yeah. Oh, true, yeah.
It is 3 volumes. So yeah, and that's so I just want to pose that. Now getting into the comments properly. So yeah, I guess since we were talking, so because I really appreciate Radman and Askin really going into what I was talking about before about the idea of Aizen conquering his own fears. Like Aizen had his own take on like what each moment might be, and that's that. And then Radman even had a sort of contrast with his contrasting the Espada with Aizen, and showing ways they're similar. So I feel like both of those are really helpful as potential jumping off points. Even if I end up like going like, oh, maybe this is more. Like one thing that I thought was interesting is, hold on, where was it? It was so in Radman's write up on Aroniero, with the greed, he talks about Shinji. And I remember thinking that was interesting because it's like, oh, maybe because, number 9 might be, it's either 10 or 9 as to which one would be the first one. And I realized, like, wait, chronologically, so he's talking about, like, Shinji and Aizen. Well, that, like, does Aizen conquer his greed in turn back the pendulum? Maybe, right? So that might be another way to think about it. But just, like, having these two comments to look at when I start, like, planning my video, like, that's just both really helpful. So I really appreciate that. Just like engaging with my idea, and because it's I like that. And then I also like the viewer comment, which talks about Ichigo, like personality wise, coming up as a teenager who's trying to be serious, to be more cool and mature. When, as we see with the white Ichigo, he's more cocky and expressive because like he's the side that Ichigo hides, right? Yeah. I just thought of that as a comparison to Toshiro Hisugaya, because Hisugaya is also, he's very childish, but he puts on this mask of adultness because he's a captain, and that's like a big part of his character arc. So I hadn't thought of those two as similar in that way before. So I like that observation.
I wanted to mention, because this is something directly related to what I brought up in last episode. It's about Ryukin calling Isshin Kurosaki. Chasing Hayes pointed out.
That was the last comment I was going to bring up.
He brought up something I didn't consider on the spot, and I think he's right. So his comment, I personally don't think it's what you said. We know about their history, and we know Ryukin's personality, in parentheses, cold and distant. He also had some kind of feelings for Masaki IMO. Maybe that's why he never called Ichigo's dad Kurosaki, as that sure name comes from Masaki. Maybe he didn't want to acknowledge something. But after so long, he is fine with calling him Kurosaki now. I completely agree with that. After reading that, I was like, oh, it makes perfect sense. Like, that's probably the most plausible explanation. So hats off to Chasing Hayes. He kind of cleared up that for me, because that's something that I was really, really thinking about on that particular stretch of chapters. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I also saw that. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I liked it, and again, appreciate all the comments we get. Uh, so yeah, into the discussion proper.
Oh, actually, one more thing.
Oh no, never mind.
This is like
you have one more.
at
Sorry.
least the second time someone has mentioned me replacing Shaves. Guys, okay, I'm HotBoySpicy, all right? I'm not Shaves, all right? Shaves is a cool guy, but he's no HotBoySpicy, all right? Okay?
No, so to explain that, Dot has just been, he's basically on every episode, he's been like, well, like, that I haven't, because on the Shades episode, The Bear, he was like, oh, HotBoySpicy sounds different in this one. And on the first episode, he was like, oh, Mathwis sounds different in this one. So
okay.
it's just it's a running joke.
Oh, gotcha. Okay,
so he did that one because it came out after the Shades one. So I don't know how long he's gonna keep it up, but
actually, I respect the memory if that's the case. If there's like a trend he's going for, and he's not being he's not singling me out. I respect it.
No, I'm familiar with him, and that's I've also seen all the comments, so it's like because that was one of the first comments on the first one was his comment.
Now I feel bad for mentioning. Now that you exposed everything for me, I feel bad for mentioning it because now he's going to feel awkward about keeping up with a meme, and it's a good meme.
That's not in his personality, but
good, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, good shit. Anyway,
unless he plays up the fact that you think he might feel bad over it.
Oh so. No, I even if he was only singing, I still don't give a shit. Like even if he was singing, criticism in general just doesn't really bother me. Even if it's bad, because then I just get to make fun of it. So, but that's not this isn't like actual criticism we're talking about. Anyway, whatever. Bleach, guys. So first off, we start out. I didn't go, but before we started recording, I didn't go back and check. Just to be clear, we start out with Nnoitra coming in right after the Grimmjow fight, right? That's where this...
Yes, so that's... Yeah, Nnoitra comes in to fuck shit up, and then you also have... Well, at the same time, Granz is still fighting Renji and Uryu.
Oh, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Alrighty. I do want to say something that I completely forgot to mention last episode is I thought it was cool that I was looking at the holes in each of the hollows, and I realized, like, oh, wait, Grimmjow's hole is literally in his stomach. Like, that kind of, like, is resonant with when he was in Ajucha, and, like, no matter how much he ate, he couldn't ascend into a Vastolord, almost like he has, like, a hole in his stomach. Like, everything was seeping out of it, so, he couldn't digest it and transcend. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool visual representation of that. I don't know why I either didn't pick up on it immediately for that episode, or I just forgot to mention that. I feel like it's the latter, because I feel like that's like really like obvious symbolism. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I remember hearing there was one of the analyses I read. I'll try to link it if it's the right one. It was related to Orihime and Ulquiorra, and I remember it really went into the idea of like, well, because I think it was actually talking about it from the sense of like chakras, which you might, I think that's the basically like the body, like the idea of like parts in the body representing certain spiritual aspects. I think that's
I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, okay, I was about to say, I was like, that's a thing in Avatar, right? And I was kind of getting to that. I remember someone's using basically because like there's if there's a hole there, then there's a lack there, right? So I just remember them going into it with Ulquiorra. But I don't remember any of the points brought up with Ulquiorra having and where his hollow hole is, and
I'd be very
how it ties to the other ones, because it sounds really interesting. Yeah, but I just don't remember enough of it. I'm just bringing up the vague idea in case maybe someone knows anything about it.
Yeah, and Ulquiorra specifically, I'd be very interested in learning more about that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So. Nnoitra, right? That's I guess the.
I feel like Nnoitra is like the first, because like we got all the Nell stuff, and we got we do have all the captains coming in, but I feel like Nnoitora's fight with first Ichigo and Nell, and then Kenpachi is a good starting point, because I like Nnoitra. He's got some interesting stuff. The one thing is because like last time I was like, oh, I think he's got a little sexist, and it's like, no, he literally says he doesn't like the idea of a man being weaker than a woman. Like it's directly stated. And the reason I forgot about that is because I remember not having a conversation, but hearing a conversation a friend had with someone who was like doubtful of the idea in the first place, and rereading it, I was like, it's weird to be doubtful about that idea, because it's literally just directly stated that he looks down on women, right? And just can't accept them being weaker or being stronger. But yeah, what are some things? Did you have any things to say about Nnoitra or new takeaways?
I actually have a lot to say about Nnoitra.
Oh boy.
And it's pretty disjointed. I wish I was a little bit more comprehensive in my note taking, because some of this is literally not even coming from the notes I took. It's coming from a conversation I had with Radman. It's not even anything specifically he said. It's stuff that I was typing to him. Some observations I was having in real time while I was reading it. And I was just like typing like a madman to him, and he was typing back to me. But I guess starting on the woman thing, on the sexism. What I was saying to Radman is like what he's expositing in that moment is is sort of like a quote unquote fundamental truth coming from, but it's a fundamental truth that doesn't come from hollows. It's a fundamental truth of like humanity, humans, right? Beings that are completely separate from humans, and the idea of gender and that power dynamic at play.
That's true. Yeah.
Where males and women, it almost seems.
Oh, duh! He's a fucking praying mantis.
Yeah. Wait.
Which.
With the praying mantis, where are you going with that? That's interesting.
So females eat the heads of the male when they when they mate, basically.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Okay, interesting.
I think so. Yeah. Hold on, let me make sure that I'm not mishearing that. Because I might be mixing it up with another animal, but I'm pretty sure. Because my first thought was actually like lionesses, which are because I feel like they do the actual hunting, if I remember correctly. Not that male lions are. Okay, yeah. So female praying mantises eat their mates, basically.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
That is.
I didn't even know that. Okay. Yeah, and that dynamic, that superior, Nell being a female, yeah, that really goes into the praying mantis thing. Wow, I didn't even know that. That's another.
I just forgot about it. I completely didn't think about it until just now. I was like, wait, duh.
But yeah, I just found it very ironic because he sees humans as fundamentally inferior, yet he's using a very human metric to gauge, to qualify his anger at the fact that he's losing to a woman. But for me, it's like it's a guy's hiding his true disdain. And I think, I don't know. See, this is where, and this is a lot of my Bleach interpretations right now. It's like, I haven't gotten the conclusion necessarily, but this is simply on one aspect of Nnoitra. What did I write here? He operates in the domain of excuses that he doesn't have to acknowledge the fear he holds deep down. Okay, I did kind of come to a swift conclusion here. Yeah, he operates in that domain to make excuses so that he doesn't have to acknowledge the fear he holds deep inside, is what I said. But that fear, I think maybe what I'm alluding to here, and I wish I would have just explicitly said what that fear is in this moment when I was talking to Radman. What I might be alluding to is some of my quote-unquote analysis that I wrote down and where his fear comes from and its relevance to like despair. Because as we know, later on, even in this reread, he's associated with despair. And I guess so. What my interpretation of that is, it's essentially a cope. Him saying he's angry at this is a cope, because I think in reality, Nell is just another example of that like kind of futility of his existence. Like he can't eclipse her no matter how much he tries, because he's in this form that's in constant despair. A form that's meaningless, that comes from fear, that can't ever transcend that sort of boundless void. And it's interesting, especially when I get into more of that in what I've written here for Nnoitra. I should have honestly reread this before we started, but if you have anything you want to say about Nnoitra while I skim this real quick, so I don't fumble over my words or anything.
Okay. Well, I guess I was even thinking about it almost in an inverse sense. I guess where it's like Noitora's inability to surpass Nell wasn't that created his hopelessness, I guess, and maybe if that makes sense, of just like because like he didn't just kill her, he just like weakened her and got by destroying her mask and got rid of her, like just sort of I guess like I thought it was interesting the line of dialogue we had with Grants. Because the idea of like common interests and common goals, because Nnoitra says that they don't have a common goal, they only have a common interest, and I guess the way I read that is that because Grant's obviously like he has interests in like science and stuff, and just maybe, but like Nnoitra, he's despair, hopelessness. He doesn't have a goal. He's not actually aspiring to anything. He's interested in getting rid of Nell, but like but he's just like because he wants to be the strongest, but like he's really just looking for a place to die. He doesn't really because he that's his goal if anything, and getting rid of Nell is not his goal, right? It doesn't help him do that. So that's just some of that's
looking for a place to die though. Even that came off to me as like cope, because like what is he consistently doing in this fight with Kenpachi? He's consistently rejecting the idea of defeat. With Nell, he's but with Kenpachi, it's not just that. He's like rejecting the idea of death. He's like, no, I'm not dead yet. No, I'm not dead yet. And I guess you could say he's pushing for death rather than in that moment. And I guess that's another interpretation of that. But regardless, some of the stuff I had quite a bit to say, surprisingly, which is really good. It's more for the big three agenda for sure, and bumping Bleach up. So one of the things I wrote is like Nnoitra fears losing because it presents the potential outcome that he will be pitied. In other words, the lowest possible status. This is why he takes any advantage he can in a fight, no matter how underhanded. He even seeks out Chad and Ichigo after they're fresh off another battle. Because, like, completely opposite of Ichigo, in that, like, the fight itself, the fight itself matters far more. Like, the context of the fight, the state that both combatants are in, what edge they have on each other. Like, is it fair? Ichigo cares so much about that. But whereas Nnoitra is only thinking about the result. The result matters far more to him, whereas Ichigo is the exact opposite. But he's also the opposite of Kenpachi in the sense that Kenpachi kind of like lives in battle, and to the point where the result is kind of meaningless. It's done. Like he's not having fun anymore. But Nnoitra is only concerned with like that end result. It's very interesting how both of Noitora's opponents in this section completely contrast him in the aspects of how they view battle and stuff. But something, because Radman pointed out in our conversation, he was saying his death just feels absolutely pitiful / wasteful. Like he's really an ant at the end of it all. And I said, sounds to me like it's completely thematically resonant, because given his ultimate fears about like the result of battle, the feeling of being pitied by someone more powerful than you after defeat. In other words, the lowest possible status, which is something I said already. He fights only for a winning result. I had more to say here. I'm literally... Did I just rewrite what I wrote here? I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, I guess I did. Write it here. Never mind. Okay, cool. Did you have anything else on Nnoitra? I'm curious.
I'm trying to think, because like I mean, just in general, I was paying attention to the sort of beast-human dichotomy. Like one line that Nnoitra has to Kenpachi when he comes in, he says like it's animalistic instinct to avoid an attack, and Kenpachi doesn't have that. So because like for all the times Kenpachi is compared to a beast, ultimately his like a bit like his limitations of himself is human. Like same with Ichigo having that like honor and fairness thing. Right, like if anything, Kenpachi is like he also wants it's not that he wants a fair fight specifically. He wants a thrilling fight, and so he makes it more fair in the sense of weakening himself because he's so insanely powerful. Or again, like Nnoitra is the opposite of that, because like you were saying, he seeks every advantage he can basically because he wants to win, right? So I just thought it was interesting how, like, you sort of have that frame. Even with Kenpachi, there's still, like, an animal versus human framing device there.
Yeah.
Then let me see if there was anything else I had to say. I guess for Nell, I was thinking about how she, in some ways, like... Because she just has more, recognition of just, I guess, life and humanity in a sense, where she's like she had the power to kill, but she's not she's not just going to just kill because she can, right? She she's more willing to stay her blade and save her comrade Nnoitra, and
So actually, a lot of what I was going to be saying on Nnoitra is very relevant to Nell. So I'm glad you brought up Nell. The first thing I'll mention is he gives an interesting quote right before he gets finished off by Kenpachi. He says, "I didn't give anyone a chance to come at me a second time. Yeah, the last person he sees before he dies is Nell, like the very person that fought him again after he got a blindside victory on her." It's a very poignant conclusion to that, because it's a complete contradiction. Like the contradiction is looking at him in the moment he's thinking that. The one person, maybe it was the one exception, but that one exception ultimately ended in his defeat, because it was Nell. It was Nell's interference that allowed Kenpachi enough time to get there and inevitably finish him off. But there's a lot I picked up on the Nell Nnoitra dynamic. I guess I wrote a lot more on this than I thought I did too. So I wrote, Nell and Nnoitora's dynamic can be likened to Ichigo and Byakuya. Nnoitra has a dogma of an old and withering system, one where hollows only consume, even their own. Nnoitra had gotten used to that dominating status on the top of the hierarchy. This especially represented by his, and I need to go back because I don't know if it's actually like, does he have a weapon that's shaped like a crescent moon? Is that yeah, okay, yeah, because I was trying to remember. I was like, was that? I'm already kind of forgetting. Like, is that his weapon shaped like a crescent? So, because I wrote here, this is especially represented by his crescent moon weapon, the top of Hueco Mundo looking over all. Benel represents a potential new future of Hueco Mundo with her cooperation with Ichigo and the other Soul Reapers. She breaks boundaries and comes out on top, just like Ichigo at the end of Soul Society. Nnoitora's ideology is proven outdated and feeble, especially with Kubo's illustration at the end of his fight with Kenpachi, where his crescent moon weapon shatters. His ideology is no longer the path of progress for hollows, especially because the real moon over them all is using them as only a means to an end, which plays into despair, right? That's all his life can only ever lead to. Even with Aizen's power, he never believed hollows could find salvation. So his only solace is in battle. Yet, just like Baragon, he crumbles under the weight of a withering status quo. Not just for that, though, for his contradiction too. Nnoitra wants to die in battle, yet he also wants to be the strongest. In other words, one who never falls. You can't have both. His was always going to be a dead-end path, Aizen or not. If he stood at the summit, there would be no one to grant his wish of a glorious death. However, Nell breaks out of Aizen's grip by forming a bond with Ichigo, so she doesn't suffer the same fate as the rest. Kind of like Grimmjow, what we were mentioning earlier, is like Grimmjow kind of played out of the confines of that system. Therefore, him and Nell are pretty much the only people in this entire conflict that survive. So, yeah, when I started thinking about more of his dynamic with Nell, a lot more popped into my head about Nnoitra. And I wrote a lot about it. Like Nnoitra, after this reread, I like considerably more because I saw a lot more out of him.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely, he's great. And I don't know, I just one thing in general, like, because this also even ties to like just the fact that like fucking Almeida, Soifon's like lackey dude, the assistant captain of Squad 2, like I feel like some people might see it as a weakness of just like, because like what author goes into like this level of like long, like several, like one to two chapter long fights on such minor characters. Like for One Piece, it's like, yeah, the Luffy alliance, I guess, in Dressrosa, but that you know that was then becoming important later, and that was only one fight each. Where I feel like it's just, there's something about like, because I feel like, in retrospect, considering Kubo's failing health, there's a level at which, like, if I was going to cut some things from the story, it would probably be some of maybe these fights, rather, and if we could get, in exchange, like some of the like more resolution for certain characters later. But obviously that's not how it worked out. Kubo didn't know he was going to start failing in health, right? So I just really respect, like, for Nnoitra, like, we get like a couple flashbacks with him, this really like in-depth relationship with a supporting character through the arc. Like, I don't know, I just like how he's able to just go so in on these characters, like, because it's like, I like stories with big casts in general, but I really appreciate Bleach because it does have just so many characters and they all get so much, relatively speaking, and it's just really dense with a lot of cool things. So, and Nnoitra being one example of just like, he's because I mean, relatively, he's one of the spot. He is more important in that way, but he's also like fucking dead, and we never see him again. So
and the fact that I got all of that where I didn't before speaks volumes, and just like how much you can grasp out of Bleach by just reaching in a little bit deeper the next time. So on every reread, I'm sure years from now I'll be much more of a Bleach scholar than I even am in this reread. So it's going to be really cool. But on that note, I do want to say, because I've been talking about this in previous, I think even on the first episode, I was like, oh yeah, we'll see if the big three is going to be my big three and my top three shonen. I think it's safe to say, after enjoying Hueco Mundo way more than I ever remember enjoying it, Bleach is going to be top three for me. Top three shows.
Let's fucking go.
The big three is my big. It's they're the best. I grew up in the golden age. Okay, guys. Like, sorry, not sorry. Like, if you didn't grow up in my generation and you weren't seeing these shows on Toonami, yeah, you were just not. You were not one of the cool kids. Like,
you were born wrong. Sorry.
Yeah, you were born. I was born in the perfect generation. The big three are just the best. I have been vibing with Bleach even more so than I thought I would. The fact that Hueco Mundo is as good as it has been for me, to the point where I can comfortably say that all of Arrancar thus far has been equally engaging for me as Soul Society. It's been, I'll say this much. There's a minor distinction in the fact that I think Soul Society was a little bit more consistent. However, Arrancar has had higher highs for me, I think. But excluding, because obviously there's the stuff at the end of Soul Society and there's the stuff at the end of Arrancar.
Yes.
Barring that from right now, because we're not at the end of Arrancar, like generally where I'd be in percentage wise, between the two arcs, like it's been pretty comparable in my level of engagement. And like I said, maybe even more higher highs, like, which is surprising to me, because Hueco Mundo, I recall my first read being the most sloggy stretch for me. But it's not for, I don't know what's changed, but it wasn't a slog at all. I didn't find any. The only thing that was kind of sluggish for me, which unfortunately this fight hasn't changed much for me, my perception of it hasn't changed much, is a fight I think we're going to get into next, talking about Renji and Uryu versus number 8 guy.
Yeah.
Number 8 guy.
Well, I was gonna to finish up with Nell and Nnoitra a bit, is because I was just thinking about them in context with Ichigo, because Nell, I think she's the only Arrancar we see to actually have like legitimate comrades. I think Pesh and the fuck, I forgot his name and I don't have it written down in front of me.
Pesh and
I almost said
Dondochaka.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
Like they're the only actual Arrancar we see that have bonds with each other, basically, and positive bonds, because they were this found family. Like I do like in because they get their kind of moments too, where there's like they care about Nell. They were working to protect her while she lacked her memories, and they're just cool and fun. And I just like, but I was thinking about how like Nnoitra, like, well, I guess Nell is like an ideal of Ichigo in that way, because I don't think she's necessarily putting herself in front of her comrades, basically. But I was thinking about how Nnoitra is more like Ichigo, where like, because the way, again, Ichigo just keeps like looking down on Orihime and not respecting her power or ability to protect herself, and not fostering that, because like she has these negative views of herself as well. And I guess like Nnoitra is closer to that than he is to Nell, or Ichigo's ideal, where because like he didn't like being protected by Nell because he saw her as weaker, and Ichigo similarly sees his friends as weaker, and like just the fact that this arc is happening at all, right? Like I mentioned the Karakura town as like a symbolic sort of like comfortable place for Ichigo, and he's been pushed out of the comfortable place both times because Rukia and Orihime specifically sacrificed themselves to protect him, right? And he doesn't like that, and so he will go do whatever he can to protect them, and we see where that results for him. So yeah.
Yeah. So there's some similarities at play too. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Nice.
Yeah. I think that's about all I have to say. I'm looking through.
Yeah, let me double check too. Let's see if I kind of blitzed through my Nnoitra stuff just for the sake of time, because we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff.
I did have one more thing, but I'll let you look. Unless, yeah.
I don't think so. You go ahead.
Okay. I just thought the line that Nell had to Nnoitra, I think, where "You're a beast and I refuse to burden myself with your life." I thought that was interesting, just because again, like you have the recurring thing about like killing or not killing, and just framing it as like burdening yourself with taking the life of another, basically, because like Soul Society like puts that burden onto themselves and sort of like extols them, like they put themselves above others because they're willing to do that burden and manage souls and stuff. Where the Arrancar, they just kill because they can, because they want to, right? And Nell sort of like, so basically, you know, that's just a line that sort of ascends Nell's humanity, and then it's also like I think about it a lot just because, you know, there is such like you know, especially with Ichigo, like just like, you know, a level at which like killing is something they try to avoid, you know, because yeah, well, I guess semi-related, not even actually, no, it's not really related thought, but another comparison more so is I just remembered is, I guess, like, because I've been framing them as animals a lot, and another story arc that does a similar thing is actually the Chimera Ant arc on Hunter x Hunter, where I feel like the Espada, or just the Arrancar in general, and the Chimera Ants are a little similar in that they're young. They are new to the world, so to speak, and new to its systems and powers, basically. So they lack, like, experience, where the main characters are human and in ways they're weaker, but like they do have that experience. I forget if there was I think I have an example. Let me look up the example I have from this one. Oh, it was like Hisagi's fight with Findor later in because you know, Hisagi basically like how they treat fear, where Findor is trying to avoid having fear by like, you know, with his knowledge and stuff, where Hisagi, you know, the one thing to fear is not having fear, is his poem, I think. You know, so basically, like, Hisagi has this much, like, this experience and understanding of war, where the Arrancar is fighting, you know, doesn't. He lacks that experience. So that was just an example of that idea. Just, you know,
that is cool.
So yeah, just to compare, yeah, neat.
Neato indeed.
Yeah, but so I think that's about it I have to say with Nell, Nnoitra, and all that fighting. And yeah, Kenpachi's fucking awesome. I love how he's just like, did you know that when you swing a sword with two hands, it gets stronger? And it's like, yeah, and it's just so, and
I'll never forgive Super Eye Patch Wolf's commentary on that moment. I'll never forgive it because it's so great. How could you hate it?
Yeah.
Because
also
it's
general,
also cool in retrospect, because if you go back, it's true. Kenpachi will never fucking uses one arm. He only ever grips it with one hand. It's true. That's how he fights. So it's like, it's also cool in retrospect, because if you go back, you're like, oh wait, this is true. Like this is nice. I don't know if this is like, obviously we can't tell if it was Kubo ever intended for it to eventually lead specifically here, but what we can say is at least it's consistent. Like it makes sense.
Of course,
it's cool
yes.
to see. Yeah.
And also more just a general thing is, I don't know why like I've read, this is like the third time I've read this, and I still get fucking hyped up, because like the way Kubo just does these like big fucking hero moments with like when Kenpachi comes in, and then like chapter after that you see like, oh, the captains came in, and just like the build up is so good, because like you get the Kenpachi saying, oh, I said that I could do it alone, and then you see the little teases of them before you get the full 2-page spread of their reveal, and then later on when Aizen like closes off Hueco Mundo, but then like you see the fake Karakura town, Yamamoto and all the captains like assembled. It's just like, oh, let's fucking go! Like, I don't know, just the build up and presentation and anticipation is just so good. Like it kept getting me, and I was like, I've already read this material. Why am I getting so hyped up for stuff I've already read? It's great.
Oh man, yeah. And speaking of that, because that's exactly, dude, Kubo hypes it up more than anyone else possibly could with his own usage of the medium. What he does is at the end of the chapter, when Aizen seems to have won on all fronts, when he's like, aha, now we're going into Karakura town now. Oh, Orihime's here now. Hey, watch us as we destroy your home. It's like at the end of that chapter, Kubo writes, "The end is near," and then the chapter later, you get the reveal that, oh wait, this is fake Karakura town, and all the captains have pulled up. We're fucking ready. We're ready to roll. And then Kubo writes at the end of that chapter, "The end is far," and I was like, that's cool. That's funny. That's a good one, Kubo. That's I don't know, that it hyped me up. Like is definitely cool stuff. What do we want to talk about? What's the other? I guess is the other.
I feel like the two big fights are Grant's. I can't pronounce his name for shit, and then Zommari versus Byakuya. Those are the two big fights we get before Turn Back the Pendulum.
I really don't have much. I guess the only thing I'll say on the mad scientist guy is I don't care for the majority of the fight. I think it's relatively whatever. I will say though, the chapter "The Bad Joke," that's the title of the chapter.
Yes.
My favorite moment of the fight, besides for when Mayuri comes in, is when he starts cloning everyone, and then Uryu goes, "It really is a bad joke," and it's like the title drop, "The Bad Joke," and I was like, this is I love this shit. Okay, I love this shit, especially because that's the motif of the entire chapter. Is like it's all a bad joke. You see it in all the other situations happening with all the other paralleling fights. Great title, great punchlines that are coming to fruition for the entire chapter. But then Uryu's like name drop was very poignant for me. I was like, that's funny, that's cool. Like, I like that. Just it would even come off as cheesy, honestly, if like this was like in English and like it was acted by real people. I might even say it's cheesy, but because it's in manga, the way Kubo does it with the title drop, I'm like, man, that's raw, bro. That's fire. Like peak fiction right there, man. Like, yeah, it is a bad joke, or you're spitting, bro. Like, it's good stuff. I enjoyed it. I will say, other than that, like, my opinion on the stretch before Mayuri comes in is unfortunately pretty unchanging. I'm not. That was the moments in Huacamundo I was the least engaged. I just didn't care much for it. I understand I understand at least like a little bit of the thematic value in having two people that were once at odds with Ichigo kind of coming together through him, in a sense, and his really, desire to save Orihime, because now Renji has his own desire to save her because he's got a bond with Ichigo. Ichigo brought him close to Rukia again. So now his friend, Ichigo's friends are his friends, and kind of the same with Uryu, in that, well, even more so for Uryu, because Orihime is legitimately his friend. So two people that Ichigo gave a different new perspectives to are coming together to, and that stuff's cool. The stuff that I find actually entertaining though is when Mayuri comes in. Because Mayuri is just entertaining. Let's be real.
So fun. It's like there's evil characters you hate, and there's evil characters who like you just love because they're so entertaining. And like Mayuri's just like, oh yeah, I just replaced all my organs. Fuck you. Or like the way I remember, even just one of the earlier ones I commented on was when he he stretches his arm out and there's fucking blood anywhere, and he's like when fighting Uryu back in Soul Society, and he's like, that's inconvenient. Why did I do that? And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're amazing. I love you. Holy shit, you're terrible. But anyway, before we get to Mayuri, some other things I want to just bring up about the fight. I like the interaction Renji and Uryu have, where Uryu's like, you remind me of Ichigo, and they're like, that's not a compliment. It's like, I didn't mean it as one. Like, I don't know, they just have some fun banter and moments and stuff.
That banter is really funny. Yeah, I agree.
Also, another humorous moment I like is when Pest jumps in to attack Grants, and he reaches into his loincloth, and he's like grabbing something that's a little round and cylindrical, and Grants is like, what are you doing? I'm just like, dick jokes. Let's fucking go. I don't know. I can't get over maybe that's one of the things I like about shonen, because like, not that I don't love serious stories, but the fact that the big three all have just such phenomenal storytelling, and also just really like quote unquote lowbrow humor. Right? And not necessarily in a meaningful way, but they're not afraid to engage with that childishness while also telling very fucking interesting and compelling stories with legitimately like literary value that is phenomenally like interesting to me. Like, they're just so good. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so funny too. I'm so glad you mentioned this, because it's something that I really took to heart with my own story. I'm very inspired by kind of that shonen design. In my comedy, one thing I did years ago is, because of this inspiration, is I went back and I added a lot of comedic scenes to my stuff, and I set a precedent very early on that I'm going to be breaking up a lot of the not the I shouldn't say monotony, is I don't see any part of my story as monotonous, but I break up a lot of the serious stuff with just like stupid humor, stuff that I find funny personally, and other people probably won't, but I find funny. And for me personally, it makes it better. So it's something I definitely I don't take lightly. I feel it's a very integral part of any of these stories, Bleach especially as well. I'm glad that Kubo thus far has stayed very consistent with it, because it makes this series very charming. Like, it's what made it automatically charming for me very early on. If there's anything that caught me initially more than anything else, back in the first arc, it was the comedy. So the fact that it stayed consistently there. Obviously, it's already starting to teeter off a little bit more as we're getting more and more, like, we're just got a lot of plot going on right now, a lot of stuff going on, so it makes sense that we're not having as much by the end of this what we're reading for this episode anyway. There's not as much comedy throughout, but it makes sense. But the fact that even before this, with all the despair of Wakamundo going on, we're still getting a lot of good stuff from especially Don Chaka and Pace. I appreciate it so much, because he's still funny. He's still got it. He hasn't fallen off yet. Kubo still doesn't fail to make me laugh, and that means something to me.
Yeah. But yeah, a couple other observations. I think more I'm getting into just like ideas that he brings up that also tie into stuff, but because his aspect is madness, but I think one of the interesting things about that is that his actions, like, you can, if anything, they're coming from, to him, a place of rationality, right?
Yeah,
and logic. Like he's constantly he's constantly observing. Like, even the joke characters, he doesn't go like, oh, I'm gonna ignore them because they're silly. Like, no, he's still paying attention to them and observing their weaknesses and powers, and and then, of course, and then that ends up with, like, because Kurotsuchi, like, puts him in a space where he can't, like, his logic can't do anything with his, like, sort of time stop, in a sense. And that logic, because that logic, I think, pure logic is basically madness, right? Because, like, it's inability to, expect, like, because if you only expect what is expected, you can't deal with the unexpected. Like, you need a level of, like, what Kurotsuchi has. Kurotsuchi's madness, right? Like, he represents what Grant's fears, basically, what he, like, he's trying to run from by being so logical. Because part of that for Kurotsuchi is also failure, right? Like, that, which ties into the failure perfection angle. But what were you going to say there?
I was going to say, I would go so far as to say it's what you're saying is perfectly depicted with Kurotsuchi's trump card, and that I don't think someone like I don't know this guy's name either. No, I'm just going to keep calling him number 8, I guess. Number 8, I don't think could possibly conceive something like this, because even the idea of it is almost asinine. Like, a drug that can make your perception of time almost, like, infinite. Like, that's, like, something, like,
that he just has in his assistant just chilling there, like, and she's perfectly fine.
I don't think this Espada has the capacity to even conceive something like that, because he would probably automatically deem it as impossible. It's illogical to even try to concoct something like that. But Kurotsuchi, his genius lies in a domain that it's like, oh, why would I limit myself to, like, oh, it sounds improbable. Like, why not try until it becomes probable, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, even in the final attack, what you're saying, I think, is resonant. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and just another thought I was thinking about is because I think, to tie it to science a little bit, I was just thinking about how, like, imagination and failure, right? Like, those are also very, like, part of the scientific method is failing a million times so you can find out what works, right, and understand what doesn't. And so like, again, perfection and logic don't type of science. And another way I was thinking of is just like with some of the famous scientists, like Einstein knowledge-wise, like, he's a very smart guy, but we know more about, like, the world and how it works than he did, because, his stuff was, like, fucking decades old. But the way he thought and how he was able to come to the conclusions he did from with what he had, like that, like, I remember in school I learned, like, he part of where he came from with the theory of relativity, he was just imagining, like, what would it be like to be sitting on a photon of light, basically? Like, what does light see? And like he realized, like, oh, you wouldn't be able to see anything, basically. Like that's the kind of, he was, his ideas, his madness, you could say, led to him, becoming fucking Albert Einstein, the most famous scientist in history, right? So, it's just really good.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, his some of his lingering adherence to classical thinking of his time was actually his greatest detriment. Because one of his biggest blunders was a sort of I remember he like quoted, he was like he was doubting his theory that the universe was ever expanding. It wasn't a stagnant space. He was doubting it at the later parts of his life. We confirm later on that is actually happening. But again, like Einstein's own, like, his own practical thoughts, sort of.
Yeah, his logic, right?
His logic, that logic of the past sort of always was in the back of his mind somewhere, and it sometimes would get the better of him as well. We all kind of have that. That gnawing thing about artists and physicists alike. Mm-hmm. It's something that self-doubt, right? That kind of makes us want to be confined in that box rather than always looming outside of it. But it's just interesting because I think even Neil deGrasse Tyson has said, like, that was Einstein's biggest blunder, and it wasn't even really a blunder. It was just like the doubt in his own theory was his greatest blunder. That's just interesting. Anyway,
a couple last things to say is, one, I was just, because he talks about how, like, he hates things that are vile, and he thinks that humans are inherently below hollows, but then there's a contradiction there where, well, he puts Aizen, a human, above above them all, basically. So I just noticed that, there's an instance of him not following his own ideals, basically. And then also I thought the conversation was interesting when Kurotsuchi comes in and they talk about names. And like, I just need to know what specimen jar I'm putting you in. And I was just thinking about how names are part of, like, self-identity. Like, the first thing that happens when Aizen, turns a hollow into an Arankar is he, like, with Wonder Weiss, he's like, what is your name? Right? Like, he's allowed, like, they choose who they are, basically, right? Like, normally when we're born, our parents choose our names. But for the Arankar, they choose their own names, and and that's just been a recurring thing. Like the fight with Ikkaku and the other guy back in one of the earlier readings, and I think it comes up with Byakuya and Zommari a bit too because of the way that they're Zommari especially is, like, holding class and position. Like because I think he says something like he wants to know Byakuya's name, and is like, Byakuya's like, why should I have to tell you my name when I'm just gonna kill you, or something like that. Right. So I was just noticing how names are recurring, and Kurotsuchi, like, they're not just self-identity. They're also, like, in this case, it's Kurotsuchi's, like, he's seeing himself as above Grantz. Like, he as a human is seeing Grantz as a specimen, right? So he still wants to know that specimen's name. Like, there, So I don't know. Just not something with a big point. Just a noticed trend I wanted to point out.
It's very interesting, especially given that running under the same. In relation to Aizen, running under the same trend of him, like, being always wanting to be in the bounds of, like, what people have accepted as just the way things are. Aizen even rejected that whole idea of, like, people are bestowed a name. He allows these people to not only be birthed as new selves, but even in their name, the biggest identifier of what they are. They get to choose that as well. So it's interesting, and I'm wondering too. On that note, like, what was Aizen's whole thing with the Hogyoku and giving the Rankars? Was it more Aizen, like, kind of held it out in the abyss and was just like, hey, anyone who takes it, you're free to. Like, he didn't really truly enforce it on anyone. Like, he obviously most hollows would probably choose to ascend, but there's probably some that didn't want to. But maybe Aizen never forced anyone to do that. It was simply like, hey, I acknowledge you. Do you want to ascend? And
that's a good I feel like that's a good question.
It's interesting because that kind of goes hand in hand with the idea that he also allowed them to choose what name they wanted to take. That's interesting.
Because the only ones I remember us seeing were Wonderweiss and the Grand Fisher. But I don't remember for sure. I just remember Grand Fisher ran away, and next we saw him, he was turned into an Arankar already. But it's been a while. I didn't go back. I didn't think about it, so I didn't go back to check. And I think maybe it was, I forget if it was Radman's or Askins, but one of them was talking about how, I want to say Radman's because I feel like I read his comments later or after. Anyway, but he was talking about how Grimjo didn't go join up with Aizen immediately, and it makes sense that because I think, just in line with Aizen's ideology, forcing people to do things. Another one of the Nietzschean sort of discussions was the idea of self-actualization versus helping others, with the idea being if you help someone, then they become weaker because they become more reliant on other people, where it's really, if you want to help someone, they need to be motivated to do something themselves and become stronger for themselves. So if he forces Hollows into being Arankars, versus Hollows who want to become Arankars, the latter is what he's looking for. He wants choices. He wants them all to be making their own choices, basically.
And be stronger for it. Be stronger tools.
Exactly. Yep. And then I think the last fight we have to talk about is Byakuya versus Zommari.
Hold on, okay? Got the most important question.
Go ahead.
Shoot. On this fight.
Hit me.
Okay, which is, what did Kurotsuchi do to revive? What exactly was that man doing behind the curtains? What did Uryu and Renji see? I need to know.
That's a good question, because even Nemu was embarrassed about it. So
and that's a hard one. That's a hard one to get her.
There was a volume drawing of him being embarrassed about it too. Uryu still being embarrassed, I guess. They can't look her in the eyes anymore. That is a good fucking question.
Did he? Yeah, I'm just anyone have clarification? Maybe Kubo even answered that in the question and answer stuff he's been doing. anyone give me that information? Maybe there's a dojin that really goes in there.
Oh God!
Link me that too. Just anything you guys got.
I guess relevant because just I was just thinking about how some certain her being the way Granz revived through her and exploded her was fucking gruesome and horrific in itself. And I don't know, I just noticed some of the levels of gore. It's pretty just it just happens. And another one was when Rankiku got her stomach ripped out.
I was just talking about this yesterday, bro. The Rankiku scene. Because I was talking about censorship in the Bleach anime, because I've noticed a lot of it. They censor so much shit.
Because the TV standards are different,
one of the ones that is just that I know is just, this is one of the worst, because in the manga it's so gruesome. Her side gets blown off. You see it all, but not only that, I don't remember what the monster's name is, but
Ion.
He's playing with her flesh, with her side. He's literally he's twirling between his fingers. It's so gruesome. It's holy shit, Kuma, holy shit. It's some gruesome shit in Bleach, and he's not just not afraid to rough up the Orihime's been fucked up countless times in the manga. Even back when Yami power slammed her, when Yoruichi is picking her up, her face is covered in blood. She's looking fucked up. When she's getting beat up by those girls, she just looks really fucked up. And the anime censors all of that. All of that is censored.
Because I said, TV standards. I
understand. I understand why it has to be, but it's just unfortunate that you don't get to see the full Yeah, I'm just. I guess I'm trying to say.
Well, because like sometimes what studios can do is they release it censored, but then in the Blu-rays, which because DVD releases have less standards as well. That's why OVAs historically are able to be much more violent and dark or whatever. Like I think probably one of the more infamous ones is because you're not allowed to show people under the age of 20 smoking. So with One Piece, they fixed that. Anime Sanji is literally a year older. He's actually. They made him 20 because he was already 19, so they just decided, no, he's 20 in the anime so that way they can show him smoking. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, funny. There's a very important part in part 3 where Jotaro uses a cigarette to basically trick an antagonist, and they on the TV version, the bottom half of his face is literally like covered in shadow. It's removed in the Blu-rays, but it's just really awkward and funny to see because he's 17 years old and they can't show a minor smoking on TV, but it's also really important that Jotaro does this story-wise, so it's like it's just a really awkward, so just a couple examples of censorship that I always think about. That's funny. So so hypothetically they could have like animated that scene in a way that would have censored it and then removed the censorship in the Blu-rays, but apparently they didn't because it's hard. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
But yeah, I guess my thought was more like, just with Mayuri, you have like something violently horrific with Nemu being fucking destroyed by Granz's revival. You have something like existentially horrific when he uses his poison, and like just the thought of him being stuck there for centuries, unable to move as this Mayuri is slowly moving towards him. Like that's fucking horrifying. And then it ends with just the sexual revival of Nemu that is like that's the one that we can't see apparently. We see
all the stages of life in this one section. The pleasure, the pain, the horror.
Yeah, what a fight! What a battle! What a fight! It's just because no, I do not have any guesses and nothing I want to think about. So yeah.
I want to think about it.
Oh God.
Anyway, I guess the next one we should talk about is Byakuya, right?
Yes, versus Zommari, which I got a little bit new things out of it. But how did you feel about this fight, and how do you feel about it now? Because I
remember not caring for it. I do care for it now.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear, but or I was hoping to hear. But so yeah, nice, because I think it's like even just the way it starts with like Byakuya getting his captain robe stabbed through. Like, it kind of reminds me of what I was talking about back in Soul Society when Renji left his assistant captain badge behind when he went to go fight Ichigo, because he was acting on his own, not as someone of Soul Society. And so for Byakuya, with him getting his captain robe, like, and he's literally fighting someone who is obsessed about class, right? Like the way it's Byakuya fighting his past self, which I guess that's another example that goes into the the Arrancar as a younger less experienced like humanity, right? Because Byakuya is able to win because he has already surpassed like he's already learned this lesson, right? Like he already doesn't care or cares less about like class and status, whereas Zommari is kind of obsessed with that. But yeah, what were you? So did you have any takeaways?
Yeah. Let's see what I wrote here. I'm just going to read off what I think this is just, it's more productive if I just read off what because I always write probably a little bit too much. I just called him Arrancar 7 because I don't remember his name. Arrancar 7 thinks that Soul Reapers target hollows because they attack humans, when in reality, humans have nothing to do with it. It's keeping the balance of the world that matters to them. This is a hint toward his ideological shortcoming. Byakuya, a man who once adhered to the system out of fear, now fights a man who is completely subservient to someone who used to be a Soul Reaper himself. But because Aizen's power is so much greater than the ones below him, Arrancars like number 7 bow to him. Byakuya learned of pride that transcends the position of a Kuchiki, or rather, he always knew it. He just needed someone like Ichigo to remind him what his fear hid away with Hisana's death. Now this fight proves he's found it again. Pride in his loved ones. Even Arrancar 7's final decree is in respect to Aizen. Or even Arrancar 7's final decree in respect to Aizen appears more like a plea for salvation than actual gratitude. Everything he did was out of fear of the one above him. But Byakuya conquered his well before this battle. He conquered his fear. That being his fear well before this battle. So, of course, it would be one-sided. So yeah, that's just something I caught up on, like the idea of fear. Where I saw Rancor 7's like his sort of gratitude to Aizen, I saw it more as like definitely less so like he truly appreciates Aizen, and more so it's like he feels like he needs to do this to keep his position intact under Aizen, or else he gets squashed by Aizen. That's how I kind of see it, anyway. So that idea of fear that held back Byakuya so much in Soul Society, but now he's just showing how far above it he's been ascending. It's cool. When I related it to that, I was like, oh, this fight is actually really cool.
Mm-hmm. One of the other ways I thought of how it factors into the fight is because at first Byakuya was trying to avoid the technique that he learned from Yoruichi, and I realized that it's like, oh, like because he even mentions how it's like he was trying to avoid using it, and I was thinking about how it's like, well, because it's a technique that he learned from someone who is now she's no longer part of Soul Society. She isn't a peer anymore.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
And so it's like in not using that technique, he's basically like valuing class and rank. But by using it, he's basically saying, like, even if it's a concession, it's a level. There's like, it's not as important. Like this isn't what it's about, right? Like this, he doesn't need to be so beholden to that. Where ultimately Zommari, like, he's crying the name of his king, the person who's above him. Like, there's a way that, like, that's he's still obsessing over rank even in his death, basically. But I was also thinking of just how that ties to ecstasy. He does, because he seems to be like, like. Fanatically, like I don't know. If there's any like enjoyment or hedonism he ever shows, it's when he's crying out Aizen's name, right?
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I was thinking about that as like maybe he's because like you said, the obsession for rank as a way to stay alive, basically. Like he upholds it because he's been given this position. He values what he's been given by Aizen so much, basically, but also because it keeps him alive, right? So like in that way, he was very weak, and especially I love the way that even like where it's like I have this many eyes that can stop this many things, and Byakuya's like, okay. Have 10,000 tiny swords.
Yeah, I have like
good luck,
100,000
buddy.
little pink things, you idiot. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a really short and sweet fight. I like it.
I definitely enjoyed it a lot more that I saw in it. So good shit, Wakamundo, good shit, Kubo.
Yes.
Yeah. So Aizen invading Karakura, getting blindsided. I was writing that it's cool that because Aizen was kind of blind to all the change that was taking place already in Soul Society since his departure anyway. Like he couldn't truly see that. So he's basing his plan on the status quo that he assumes they'll follow. But his perfect plan ends up blowing up in his face because it stalls him long enough. Like this interruption from the captains already being in there in Fate Karakura Town, it disallows him from ever initiating his plan on and making Karakura Town Ryokan. So this reversal, in a sense, is the beginning of the end for Aizen. Like the one thing that he hasn't been seeing, that he really hasn't been able to peer through, has blown up in his face. And in this moment, he literally says, "Oh, I didn't see this coming. No matter. They're way below me in terms of my arsenal, in terms of what I myself can produce. It's no matter. It's a minor bump in the road. Yet again, like I just said, it ultimately becomes the very thing that extends this conflict long enough for Ichigo to come in and to have his transcendence and for Aizen's ultimate fall. So this minor bump is actually a major bump that signifies where he's going to end up, and how there's a lot more just beyond even this that he hasn't been able to see. It's going to wind up ending in his failure. So it's cool. It is cool.
Yeah, I was also just thinking about the line he gives to Orihime about or I think it was him, where it's like, we all get sad when the sky darkens, just smile and wait, because the implication being that dawn will come. Because obviously, like Aizen is also like he brings light to Wakamundo, but his dawn, like he thinks his ultimate goal is he's gonna sit on the seat of the Soul King. He's gonna depose Soul Society and be at the top. Like his dawn, like it's a dawn in the sense of like he's trying to create a new world, basically, right? Mm. But at the same time, like that's not Orihime's dawn, because she's not really one of his comrades. But I just thought it was an interesting line. Aizen's full of those.
Yeah. And then also, in this same little section, we have Aizen deferring to Ulquiorra and talking directly to him about, I leave Huecamundo to you. And I love the symbolism of Ulquiorra appearing right in front of Aizen's throne. Because I think this goes with what you were saying, and it probably means a little bit more than just that he's like the current strongest in Huecamundo now, but more so maybe that he was always the secret strongest member of the Espada. After Aizen.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because Yami's 0. He's the strongest Espada. Like, he did not take the strongest Espada with him. He left them there, right?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Given Ulquiorra's second, resurrection, second stage resurrection, like he'd probably be still above even number 0 Yami.
I agree. I meant strongest in terms of like as they see it, right? With the numbers. But because I agree that I think Ulquiorra is most likely the strongest Espada. I'm not super into power scaling. Like it's not something I'm super invested in. So I'm not. I ain't gonna crunch the numbers to prove that, but just
I'm not.
From what we see,
in terms of the Espada, I'm actually pretty interested in it solely because I love the fuckery behind it, like about how like the numbers you're led to believe, like this is the strongest, but then even on face value, it's totally blown up in your face where you're like, Yami is like the strongest. What? Like what? It's like what? And then it makes you think a little bit more. Like, wait, what? And then especially given like Ulquiorra's quote is like, but no one knows about this. So wait, is Ulquiorra the strongest? Like, it's cool. I like that shit. So it's made someone who's not usually into power scaling too much. I'm interested in the power scaling in this particular facet.
No, that's fair. Yeah, by number crunching, I meant like literally how power scalers will like do lots of math to determine how powerful characters are based on their feats and stuff. Like I'm not interested in that.
Oh well, yeah, that's something. So for instance, even with One Piece, I am very adamant in my server. Like, hey guys, like I'm giving you your safe space, but I will not engage with like the whole like the DC feat of Zoro in this particular. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, and it's just so not. I like to talk about matchups and who would win in a certain matchup because I think that's fun. And it doesn't get way too overblown. We're not getting into because I feel like all of that like talking about math and stuff that's essentially headcanon because no author works with
that's not how art works, honestly. Like that's
it's just no one thinks like that. But talking about like something as cool as like matchups, like how could this character fare against this character given like their abilities and what they can do, and do their abilities counter this character? Like that's fun, and that's not super overblown. And I like talking about that stuff. But anything beyond that is just it gets, and honestly, people that are really into it get really really into it, and they're a lot of the times very vitriolic. So I just don't like to be.
I've had my brushes with toxic power scalers, and I don't want to do that again. Yeah. It was a whole arc of the Weeb Club predecessor, so let's not talk about it anymore.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah. We get. Or do you have anything to say before we jump into Turn Back the Pendulum? Or
nope. But I will say the first thing on Turn Back the Pendulum.
Yes.
On Pendulum is, bro, Kubo, Lubo moment with the jazz shit, man. Lubo moment. Like the fucking Shinji listening to.
Jazz.
Yeah. And like Jazz was.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the way he said, because like he even says in the beginning of he says the beginning of the next volume that like that was the author comment in the magazine. So it's like there's a level. I think he was aware of that when he published that. Unless like so basically here's my understanding of the publishing process. So he writes the chapter. It's submitted to the editor. I'm pretty sure it doesn't go into the magazine that week. I think they actually have a backlog of two or three chapters. I think because obviously that like having that like really close turnover time is that's a tightrope. So they'll still delay chapters based on sickness and stuff. But that is that's how I understand it. So basically like it's very possible in those few weeks he actually like wait. hold on, when was Jazz? Ah, fuck. And then, so basically in that like 2-3 weeks time between the chapter being given, the final manuscript being handed to the public, to the, his editor, versus like the chapters actually publishing and when they ask for the author comments. Because usually the author comments are completely inconsequential. Like, I ate instant ramen yesterday for the 50th time. Help me. Like, that's, you've read author comments, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So at least, so he, if it was a mistake, he realized it before the chapter came out and it was included in the author comment, or he just did it deliberately because he likes music and he wanted to mention jazz for some reason.
Honestly, epic if that's the case.
Yeah.
It just like immediately took me out because I was like, jazz definitely was not a thing. Then I immediately, that was like the first thing I thought of whenever I was like, were record players even like a thing people were doing back then? I actually don't know. Like, I was questioning it, but then I saw his comment at the end, and I was like, oh, okay. At least he acknowledged it. Okay, like that's good.
Yes. So again, I don't know the actual time frame of the acknowledgement of if it was instant or if there was a delay because it maybe I don't know if it was a mistake or not if we didn't, because like that's the thing about especially anachronism and historical inaccuracy is sometimes, like in this case, I guess my question is like, okay, why bring up jazz is my question. Like how does it meaningfully tie to like Shinji's character or whatever? Because I guess like an example I was thinking of is I guess similar like time and place is there was a webcomic called Lackadaisy. And one of the reasons I partly remember because it was good and I liked it. But I also remember the author would give comments about how because she literally knew it was a Prohibition era was the setting of the webcomic, and she literally would be like, okay, I drew one of these arch radios. They weren't invented for like 10 years after this comic, but I wanted to draw one. So whatever, like it's the kind of shit that I wouldn't have noticed as being historically inaccurate. But this author was deliberately being historically accurate for personal like I wanted to draw this, or like one was like they drew a check and it's like actually bank checks at this time were like 3 pages, but I was going more for recognizability in a single panel, basically, right? Yeah. So it's like, oh, that makes sense. Is Shinji's theme jazz? Is that where you're going with that, or?
So it's not. It's kind of jazzy. It's just in the 1,000 Year Blood War. His song is like the only one with like a bunch of lyrics in it, and it's got a kind of a jazzy undertone to it. But I think Shinji in general is very tied to music, so they went hard on his OST for 1,000 Year Blood War. It's like I remember when that episode dropped, and I watched it, and that OST came on. I was like, whoa, it's really good. Like just as a song, it's really fucking good. If ever you hear this, it's great. I would recommend listening, guys. If you guys watching, if you haven't listened to Shinji's OST from 1,000 Year Blood War, it's a must listen.
One day I'm gonna watch all of Bleach because I really need to hear Ichigo's theme in context as well because it's iconic. Yeah. So yeah.
So. I do love that we're getting early on in this Turn Back the Pendulum flashback. We're getting more Kenpachi and Unohana foreshadowing with Shinji and Love's conversation, and even a bit with Shunsui and Ukitake. They're all talking about the previous Kenpachi basically, and that obviously is Unohana. Really cool stuff. Because I'd completely forgotten all about this.
For sure. No, well, I was going to say, because, like, the way, like, Kyoraku, Shinsui is, like, he's remembering the captains that have been there for over a century, and he's like, and Ukitake's like, you forgot Unohana, and he's like, oh, I did? And it's like, well, because she changed what captain she was, right? She hasn't been Squad 4 captain for a century, but she's been a captain for over a century, so, right?
Yeah, it's just, really slight stuff without saying too much in the moment. But it's enough to, when you go back, you realize immediately, like, oh, he had this plan. Like, it's very clear. This was very planned. And I also completely forgot that Hikifune was mentioned all the way back here. She's even named.
Yep, I was like, wait a minute, and I went and checked the character on the weekend. I was like, yep, Squad 0, there she is.
I completely forgot she was mentioned. So this is when she first gets that promotion to Squad 0, and then Urahara takes the place of it, and that's pretty fucking cool, man. That's just so cool. I love shit like this.
Also, I was going to mention, because I have an old note, and because again, people were really mad about Yami being the Zeroth Espada, but like I think especially when you consider just how many similarities there are between like the fact that all the Espada have an aspect of death, and all the Soul Reaper captains, like their companies have a specific focus, right? Like I'm pretty sure during his fight, Izuru literally talks about like what Squad 3's deal is, right? You know, but like there's a Zeroth company. There's a Zeroth Espada. Gasp, right? Like it's just another way in which the two are similar.
Oh yeah,
right?
like the secret reveal kind of thing, right? Like
exactly right. So we find out about, because I think this is where we find out about Zeroth's company first.
Yes,
maybe. Yeah. Which is a little before we find out about the Zeroth Espada, right? So it just makes sense. It's like like Aizen, I think by making Hueco Mundo similar to Soul Society, like he's basically trying to be like, I'm you but better in every way, because like he's trying to like he wants Soul Society to change and grow, and he didn't think that as possible, so he made his own. But like again, the way he pushes the Arrancar to challenge him and do what Soul Society wouldn't, right? Like there's a level of like, I'm doing it but better, right? So so it makes sense that there's so many ways that they reflect each other and they end up being similar. Soul Reapers and Hollows as well, because like the way Soul Reapers kind of like see Hollows as lesser and put themselves above, when Aizen clearly doesn't feel that way. Just be like, he's above, but that's not because he's a Soul Reaper or because he's the king of the Hollows. It's because he's Aizen, right? So yeah. But yeah, did you have any other observations to make about, or I'm just looking through my notes to see, but if you have any topic you want to talk about with Turn Back the Pendulum.
Yeah. Who was the 10th company captain who died? Is that ever like expanded on? It's mentioned at the beginning of this flashback. Like the 10th company captain recently died, and they had to get replaced.
I will check the wiki.
Yeah, I didn't check myself, but that was just a question I had. I was like, I wonder if this is ever like kind of explained in some way, or maybe even in a subtle way, but I don't know.
They do. Oh wait, no. Oh wait, whoa. Hold on. Okay, there was hold on. I found the character, but oh no, never mind. I was wrong. Sorry, I'm trying to.
You're good.
There's a bunch of characters. Why are there so many characters? No, man, I'm just.
There's a bunch of 10th company captains.
That's why it's miscellaneous. No, it's I saw the page I was on. I was on the miscellaneous. It was a miscellaneous Gote 13 members, and so I didn't recognize that.
Okay.
That so I was on the wrong character. Looking at the real. Okay, I found them.
So he is like a named character.
Looks like. Well, no, maybe this is a different character. Okay, I don't know. I'll have to research it later, but because I don't know which one specifically.
It could just never be explained.
Yeah, because there's like a couple. There's a couple 10th Division commander captain like characters listed on the wiki, but I don't have the yeah, I'll mess with it another time.
Yeah. I have to say, Aizen.
Oh wait! Oh my God! Oh. Hold on. Former captain of the 10th Division, Ishin Kurosaki. Or Ishin Shiba at the time. Fuck. But I was like, why does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, he was the 10th. Okay, so he was the 10th and he's assumed dead. Okay.
Because he's in the world of the living with Masaki.
Yeah, I was wondering. I was like, yeah, because I feel like this is important. But like, and I'd completely forgotten. Because that's 1,000 Blood War material. And I'd completely forgotten he was the 10th captain. Okay. Cool.
Well, yeah, and his name, it's Ishin Shiba, so I was obviously like, because I was like, wait, Ishin, I was like, wait, hold on, I recognize Ishin, and I forgot that he was a Shiba.
And I honestly, I'd completely forgotten he's part of the Shiba clan too, which kind of like botches what I was saying of like last episode about Kaien being or Ichigo being the reincarnation of Kaien or some shit. It just makes sense Ichigo's going to look like Kaien in this family because like
they're related. It's like a Zoro-Rima connection, right? Even less distance, in fact. But
so that's cool. So it's like a slight foreshadowing of the fact that like Ichigo is like technically related to this family. They look like him. So yeah, cool. I find it funny though because Shinji's epic phrase during the flashback to Aizen is I've known since you were in your mother's womb, right? I find it funny that Aizen takes that so personally that he literally he makes it literal with Ichigo. Like,
or absolutely.
Very funny. Like Aizen's like, oh Shinji, you think you got my ass? Well, hey, listen, I'm gonna actually.
Your boy over there, I got his ass. Like, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
that is pretty funny.
I literally knew him since he was in his mother's womb, bro. It's just I picked up on that. I found that funny. I was like, oh, like this quote, since you're in your mother's womb, like that's literally Aizen and Ichigo. Like, that was very funny.
Yeah.
Also, another little funny detail is like I noticed, I was like, oh wait, no wonder like when he gets serious, Urahara has so much aura and he's so scary. The man used to be a warden, like that. Yeah, he's like the Magellan of Bleach, bro. Like,
oh yeah.
He's of course he's going to be scary. Like the dude would have to subdue these powerhouses on a regular basis with bare hands. He can't even use his Zanpakuto, bare hands.
Right? Yeah. No.
Bro,
he's
no wonder. No wonder he's a G.
For sure. Something I have to say less about, or it was because we see a brief scene with a young Byakuya. And honestly, like I don't know, it stuck with me a bit just because of how different he is from adult Byakuya. And I was just thinking about how like his sort of like the expectations pushed on him and the loss that he went through like just deeply affected him so much because he's more like angry and combative and like rival, like with Yoriichi, like he has that sort of rivalry going with her. But then it's like compare that to like when they meet in Soul Society and he's much more serious and toned down, right? Like just I don't know, just the contrast between seeing young Byakuya and the current Byakuya was just like, oh boy, this guy goes through a lot. So yeah,
man, really, he's a goat. He's definitely a goat. And that scene was just like in face value, it was just a cute scene. I love how playful Yoruichi is and how she can like even rile up. Like, obviously, he's not as stoic as he later becomes, but he still, has that face.
He was aiming for that,
stoicism.
and then she
can so easily, break it down and have him running around like he should be as a kid, like acting like a kid. It's cool. It's funny. It's cute. So I wrote something else for Urahara, it seems here. What did I write? I'll just read what I wrote. It makes so much sense why Urahara is so comfortable working outside of the confines of the Soul Society. He's the only one other than Yoruichi who never goes back after being banished. It's because as his time as 3rd Division Commander of the Secret Remote Squad, he got a front row seat of the Soul Society's fucked up system, which he elucidates on to what's her face, Hiyori, talking about how these people were prosecuted under the pretense of simply because they were a danger. And if they're not operating as Soul Reapers, they're automatically dangerous and they automatically have to be here. It's really fucked up. And Urahara he gradually tried to change the status quo by working in and with the system, even as early back as this flashback, by making Squad 12 the Research and Development Department of the Soul Society. He created that system.
Yeah.
But this is exactly the opposite of Aizen's plan. And now Aizen's trying to create like this very quick change, this insane change quickly by working outside of it. Whereas Urahara ultimately eclipses Aizen by the end of this saga by doing what he's always done. While even outside of the system, he works in the confines of he works with the Soul Society still.
Yeah, right.
In a lot of respects. And he gradually changes it at times, goes on, especially with his relation, by fostering a relationship with Ichigo, by training him. Even pre-Soul Society trains him for Ichigo to go and change it. And indirectly, Urahara was changing the system gradually, slowly. And lo and behold, at the end of this, who is Aizen looking at? He's looking at Urahara, the guy who has been successful in his strategy. Slow and steady change that ultimately pays off. So it's cool that even early on this is being displayed and turned back the pendulum.
Yeah, exactly. Like I thought that was interesting, and I don't think I have anything more to add there specifically. Oh no, I guess one thing I was thinking about is how, because I think Shinji has a line early on where he talks about, because like Urahara is struggling with Hiyori, and Shinji talks about how like leaders should never try to flatter or please underlings. A leader should become a leader by being themselves and letting others follow. I was just thinking about how like that just sort of works with the characters because like Urahara, like you said, he just stays himself, right? Like, and he's able to gradually like change things for that.
And who was watching? Aizen, and Aizen never acts as himself.
No, like even the King of Hollows is still operating under like obfuscation and lies, right? Like there's still like there's a level of because he wants he wants to be understood, but he doesn't want to because going back to the Nietzsche thing where it's like if he lets himself be understood, then that won't necessarily create understanding. Like someone else has to like work for it, right? Because that's more valuable and meaningful, and like to work for it by piercing his illusions, like the fact that with Shinji, right? Like he doesn't, he gives them a chance. Like he even like he literally like talked about how it's like oh, if you distrusted me so much that you literally didn't even recognize that I wasn't behind you. Like that wasn't me, dude. That was my illusion and a dude pretending to be me. You literally couldn't tell because he was expecting treachery, so he ironically was blind to what happened, right? Aizen has this line about how it's like, transparent treachery is nothing to fear. The undetectable is to be feared, right? Because, Shinji was expecting to be betrayed, so, Aizen still found a way to go around his expectations. But, like, because he gave Shinji the chance to understand him, and he failed, right? It was a test. And, so, because he just doesn't make it easy for people. And,
Yeah. And I guess it's interesting because you get a little bit of like a double meaning from, because who comes in right after Aizen says that? It's the one who's failed, Urahara, and he's persecuted as being like a transparent traitor. But in reality, he was the one that was not the traitor, and ultimately he's like going to end up being the ultimate saving grace for this hidden traitor. He's going to be like the he's going to have what ultimately dispels Aizen. Just cool stuff. That
I was actually thinking of the transparent treachery he's aware of with Gin behind him, right?
No, yes. Oh, yeah,
because he's not afraid of it. Like he doesn't understand it. He doesn't know why Gin is prepared to stab him in the back. He's aware that it's going to happen, and he's still sad about it when it happens, right? But treachery is not one of his 10 fears, right? So he's more afraid of his greed than being betrayed by someone else. So yeah,
it hurts him all the same, and we inevitably
it does.
Yeah, interesting. I noted, and I don't know if this is true, but it's the first time I noticed. This is like the first time in this flashback we see a hollow, just like a normal hollow in the Soul Society. Because we see it in the beginning of the 9th Squad's investigation of like the Soul Reaper murders. We see a hollow. I'm pretty sure this is like the first time we see a hollow in the Soul Society.
What I don't remember is Kyan's flashback. I was about to say because I'm assuming that took place in Rokon Guy in Soul Society in that plane, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I also like because they're like, just in general, there's a level of like, oh shit, things are gonna go bad, just knowing that Urahara's still with Soul Society. All the Vizards are there. Like we just keep, either it's just like looming, or also like I forgot Urahara's the fucking big guy with the mustache. Like I was like, oh yeah, he was kind of a big dude in Soul Society too, because he was working with the Hachi and or in the same group as Hachi, I guess, of keto experts. So and then, so as it goes, there's just this like, oh, everything's gonna go bad, and like especially I don't know, it was interesting seeing like Nanao and Lisa with how Kyoraku is like, he cares about them in a sort of like paternal sense, but then there's also like, oh, Lisa needs a good experience, so he sends her off, and well, it dooms her, and in a sense, and I think we see some follow up to that going forward, but it's still just neat to see that build up.
Yeah, cool stuff. Another thing I wrote is it's cool to see Shunsui exude the aptitude for leadership so early on. Like we see it here in the conversation he has with Urahara before Yamamoto picks who gets to go out on the investigation. Like, he notices Urahara's distress and gives a solution he thinks Yamamoto will accept, but also tries to alleviate Urahara's worry by demonstrating the value of trust. But it's also kind of cool because it also demonstrates that, like, Urahara has another different kind of capacity for something that Shunsui doesn't have, and that's the ability to see something beyond the boundaries that they call Soul Society, because Urahara was pretty much accurate in his assessment that, oh, this is something that it's not simply that just Hiyori can't handle. It's that, like, most of us can't handle what's incoming, but Urahara could see it. So it's just interesting that both of these things are conveyed, and they don't necessarily contradict each other, because Shunsui still looks good in the idea of, like, the leadership aspect. Like, he's showing his stuff there, but Urahara is also equally showing some stuff distinct from Shunsui. I found that to be pretty cool, that portrayal.
Yeah, another there was an interaction with Urahara and Aizen I liked, where because Aizen's talking and Urahara notices that there's, like, a hole in his wording, and he sort of, like, digs into that. Like, he actually questions and challenges Aizen, and Aizen even goes, you're the man I expected you to be. And so, like, his action from then on is he frames Urahara and gets him kicked out of Soul Society. And I wonder if maybe the reason behind that is because because his anger at the end of it after he loses isn't directed at Ichigo, it's directed at Urahara. Like, he has the line of, like, why can't you see the world for how it should be instead of how it is, or something like that, right? Because I think he wanted Urahara to be the one. Like, if there's one character he was maybe hoping to understand him, like, because that's probably the one of the few times before Ichigo beats Aizen that we see Aizen being understood. Right? Like, someone actually, like, oh, he's actually trying to get at, like, Urahara is the closest person to understand Aizen aside from Ichigo, basically. So I wonder if maybe, like, by getting him kicked out of Soul Society, there's a maybe he's someone they could work to, like, in his ideal they'd be working together, perhaps. Like, Urahara comes to understand him and ends up, like, working side by side with him because, like, he recognized him there. But obviously that's just not how it worked at all, because Urahara stayed true to himself, even though he was, kicked out of the system by Soul Society, right? So, so that might be a part of the reason for his anger there, because he saw someone that Urahara wasn't. Like, he didn't understand Urahara, right?
Exactly. That is, that's really, really cool. And this kind of also ties into Aizen's quote. It ties into what you were also saying earlier about his relationship with Shinji. He quotes, this is Aizen, "You are lying there on the ground because you never got to know me." I think this really speaks subtextually to Aizen's greatest pain, like his inability to find true peers and camaraderie. Like, I think that line has a lot of, like, personal attachment, like personal pain with it. Like, it's just it speaks so much to who he is, and sort of also his greatest blight being the fact that it's impossible for people to understand you when you're only showing them who you're not. Understanding is a two-way road, and Aizen never truly. He always looked at head level instead of, like. Well, then again, I mean, no, I can't say that. I can't truly say that, because I'm disregarding the fact that he did leave breadcrumbs always, but no one ever really truly picked up on them. But even the people that did, people like Shinji, people like Urahara, to Aizen, it was never enough. It was never enough. But if Aizen had just reached out his hand a little bit more to the people that did smell the breadcrumbs that he left behind, then he could have had that, like, he could have had that peer-to-peer relationship that he so yearned for. And that's part of his great blight as a character. And it's just cool, because it really, when I look at this line, "You're on the ground because you never got to know me," I feel that is, like, it's a really personal thing to Aizen. Like, he's like to him that there's pain in those words. to some degree. Not necessarily externally in those words, but deep down where they're coming from. There's some pain still lingering there.
No, because again,
then Ichigo explicitly points this out, right? Right at the end of this arc. So.
Yeah, no, and I think that especially think of Aizen as compassionate, right? Like ultimately he wants the best for everyone, like because and part of it is like it's self-serving in that like if he has better challengers, then he has roots to grow stronger as well, right? But like there's still sadness. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I like that idea.
Is there anything else about Turn Back the Pendulum? I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
If you want to talk a little bit more about, or just go on to a new subject and start talking.
No, I have one more thing to say, but I'll wait until you get back.
No. I'll be able to hear it. You can keep talking.
Right,
I'm just gonna be able to real fast.
I like the line about because Shinji after Turn Back the Pendulum when they're going into basically to reinforce Fake Karakura Town. Shinji has the line about like. There being he's actually quoting Urahara, but he says, there being no miscalculation was the biggest miscalculation, which, prepare for the worst, hope for the best kind of mentality of just like, because something's going to go wrong. Another example of Hunter, to bring up Hunter x Hunter again, I remember Killua talking about during the Chimera Ants arc when he talks about like, you could, as an assassin, like going after target, you can plan all you want, but like the day that you decide to attack is going to be the day something wrong happens. Like they're going to change the schedule. They're going to go off the expected course, right? Like that's just how it always seems to go. So you have to be prepared for something to go wrong. And sure, because, obviously, like, they invade the palace and that's not how it goes out. But I was also thinking about how that ties to Aizen, because for him, everything goes as planned until it doesn't. Because, like, at the end, he fails in the end, right? Like, he's because he's so above it all that, like, he's and he has so much control that, like, it's not like Grant's, which is a contrast between them. I forget if I brought that up before, of just, like, being logical and thinking you're in control, because I do think like there's a lot of it with Aizen is like flying by the seat of his pants and just kind of being smart enough to plan for potential things going wrong, but also being able to ride. Like I think the big one being Ichigo's birth, right? Like of just like he was like, I'm gonna send out my artificial Arrancar, Shiro. I don't know what's gonna happen, and weird shit fucking happened. Very weird shit, and he was just like, let's just watch and see what happens, right? Like he was able to accept that like potential things. In that case, he was able to accept the miscalculation, but obviously like so many miscalculations ended up being his defeat. Like you were talking about how like just the fact that they're fighting Aizen and slowing him down is giving them time for Ichigo to come and join in, and especially like the fact that when they go into I forgot the name of the fucking time and space place they go in between worlds, where Ichigo is able to like basically achieve his final Getsuga Tensho. Like that, like time is really important, and just the fact that he was able to get there in time so that he can do his training. Like so just miscalculation after miscalculation. So
cool shit, man.
But yeah, that about covers it for Turn Back the Pendulum for me. Good flashback, neat stuff.
Especially in respect to everything you just said. That's good observations around the board. There's a lot, especially in regards to the time. I actually forgot what it's called too. I wish I remembered. But no, we'll get there anyway.
Because I definitely brought it up in my Aizen video, because I that was a pretty big takeaway I had with Aizen destroying the cleaner, the sweeper, and fucking shit up. But so I had to look up the names to write them in my script and then pronounce them as correctly as I could. So,
noise. I don't think I have anything more to say on Turn Back the Pendulum 2, other than like. It's really good. All the other observations I'd have are like pretty obvious stuff that everyone picks up on because they're just part of the story. I guess favorite moment of the flashback. I can't even really. I don't even know why I said that without really thinking about it. But for me, I don't even know if I could single.
Yeah, I don't know that I wasn't thinking about it.
There's so many good. There's so many good scenes in that. I mean, even something as tiny as just that. I mean, we were talking about it and then digging into it more, but I mean, just the discussion on face value alone is really cool with Shinji and Urahara. Like, hey, just be yourself. Like, don't try to, you're doing yourself a disservice to try to appease everyone below you, and it's like that's very like universal to leadership in general. Like, it's like, be yourself. If they don't respect you, well, then maybe you weren't worthy of your position. It's like, yeah, it's like, this is a pretty cool combo. Like, I really like this, quiet scene of these two. But it's not even a quiet scene because, the ending revelation, it's like, oh, Aizen was here. Oh, shit. So it's good stuff all throughout. But, what's after? What shit can we talk about after this?
I mean, I don't have much to say about Yamamoto like using his fire to keep Aizen and getting Tosin out of the fighting. It's cool. Like, just the art, like like I think, or maybe it's more later when Yamamoto actually does a little fighting. I think it's when he fights Aion, just like the way Kubo draws the fire and the lighting, and it's just. Bleach aren't good, you can't say it enough, can you? But I do really like the moment where like Ichigo's going up the tower to go save Orihime, and like that conversation between Orihime and Ulquiorra, where she's like realizing like, because I was trying to keep them safe, but then I realized like, oh wait, no, if they disappeared like I did, I'd want to come after them too, right? And like realizing her mistake basically, and of course, like Ulquiorra just being again logical and just, or they can't save you, right? Like I don't know, just they also have the volume drawings about like 6 hearts beating as one is really cool. Just I don't know, it's just Orihime is good.
Yeah, she's able to, now that she feels more resonant with those like hearts than ever before, she's able to like look at it from their perspective too and realize like, oh, like. Yeah, like I act the same way. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Do you have much to say? I don't remember exactly what comes first. Is it like the initial fights for the pillars, or the beginning of Ichigo versus Ulquiorra? I'm honestly forgetting.
We get a little bit of Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. Because like we get Orihime talking about the heart, and Ulquiorra is like, if it can't be seen, it doesn't exist. And then we get. Are you breaking up or are you hiccuping?
I am coughing because I'm. I forgot to mention at the beginning of this. I'm still recovering from a bad cold, guys. So apologies for that.
Okay, right. I forgot. I did forget about that. But
I'm gonna ask that, so I forgot to mention that at the beginning. But yeah, I mentioned it before we started recording. But yeah, I'm still kind of sick. Sorry, guys.
Well, yeah, I just want to, since you've been having internet issues, I want to make sure like I'm hearing you properly. Or
yeah, you are.
Okay. But yeah, no, we get the beginnings of, because Ulquiorra draws his sword and they start fighting a bit, and then it cuts away after.
Oh, like yeah, because then, I think in this section too, Ulquiorra says, or no, even before that, Ichigo's like, does this mean, because he draws his sword, and Ichigo immediately responds verbally with, hey, does this mean you recognize me as an equal? And then Ulquiorra says, I recognize you as someone who must be destroyed. And Ichigo goes, oh, okay, then that essentially means you recognize me as a threat. And he goes, works for me. That's pride, right? Like, it's just pride on full display. Ichigo finds solace in the fact that Ulquiorra sees him as a threat. And it's like, why would that matter so much to him? Well, that's his pride. That's his pride talking right now. That's just cool. So more of that stuff.
I guess another thing I just thought about is like, because before Ulquiorra thought he was nothing, right? He wasn't even worth killing. But now, in a sense, he has meaning to Ulquiorra, right? Like, even if it's just his mission, right? So it's like Ichigo, he believes in the heart, right? And I'd say, like, their fight is ultimately like what births the heart in Ulquiorra, basically. Like, the heart is like through the, like, not just his fight with Ichigo, but also his sort of like emotional battle with, and a philosophical battle with Orihime, right? Like, conflict sort of creates the humanity in him and allows him to see the heart finally. So just like, I don't know, Ichigo noted like valuing that meaning in a sense of like the change, like that it matters, like that Ulquiorra's feelings to him changed. Like that's important. That he took something from that, right? So just
interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's an interesting spin on it. I hadn't thought about it like that. Nice. And then there's another interesting quote that kind of ties into that a little bit, actually. I think Ichigo says, I didn't quote who said this. No, definitely Ichigo saying this. Am I able to predict those things because I'm closer to a hollow now, or have you become more human? Ichigo
that was later, but it's still so good.
Yeah, it's great because so this is after the some of the
I know because I just read it today because I read all of Ichigo versus Ulquiorra today. So yes.
Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, well, it's funny because the answer is both. We'll come to find out. It's just that's something I picked up on. But yeah, we can talk about the before we get too much into
the pillar fights.
Ichigo. Yeah, we can talk about the Karakura stuff. Fake Karakura.
Yes, because I feel like this is like this is part of the like if there's something you didn't like from the reading, it'd probably be these more minor fights. I felt like aside from the earlier stuff with
them a lot.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's what I like to hear.
Unfortunately, I didn't do any note taking because I'll be honest. I was at the height of my sickness when I was reading that stuff. Like I was like, when I say I was sick, I mean like I had the whole 9 yards. I had like a massive headache. I had like my body aches. I could literally only lay down. So I was like, I guess I'll read Bleach because I can only lay here and suffer. So. But I enjoyed it while I was suffering. I enjoyed it. I just didn't have the mental energy to take notes. But I remember enjoying it. Like I even enjoyed Mr. Fifth Seat's fight with Zesty Arankar. I even enjoyed that way more than I ever remember enjoying it. Like I love the little revelation at the end is like, oh, this is what they call Bankai. He's like, nah, motherfucker, this is just Shikai, and I'm gonna pwn you with it. And it's like, and just the really cool, the funny revelation that it's like, nah, I call I don't like this motherfucker's name, so I call him a wrong name, and he pouts, and that's just our relationship. So he gives like a fake stupid Shikai. It's not actually my Shikai. This is my Shikai, and I found that very. It endeared me to the character a lot because it's like he doesn't find the name aesthetically pleasing. It goes with his style, and no wonder he's got a stupid looking Shikai. No wonder it's because his real Shikai is something we haven't seen yet. And just all that compounding together makes for a very very entertaining fight. This was really entertaining, really fun. And even the zesty guys like Puri Princess. Bombastic blast Sero or whatever, like even that I kind of chuckled at. I was like, I don't know if it was more so because I was semi-delirious in my sickly state or not, but I was like, like I was like, like between head throbs, I was like, like.
Charlotte is indeed an icon. Well, and the way that because he talks about like ugliness and stuff, where it's like the fact that you care so much about like appearance, it means your heart is ugly, and like, but there's a hypocrisy too because it says it's wrong to call things ugly, but he's also calling things ugly, right? And then I think when he's faced with that contradiction, because again, like in his strive to be human, he's failing, right? As a human, like he's undergoing a failure of sorts, sort of like Yumichika. He also like, I think it's similar to the Byakuya versus Zommari in that like he's grown in certain ways, maybe. But with Charlotte, it's like when his ideal fails, he says, okay, then whoever dies is ugly. So it's like he just goes back to violence, right? As an Arankar.
Yeah, and then Yumichika actually even acknowledges that inner beauty that he couldn't see before this finale, because I'm sorry, it's the opposite. The Arankar acknowledges the inner beauty he couldn't see in Yumichika. Like he's like, oh, you're ugly on the inside. Like I would never want to be that. Because what does Yumichika say? He says like, if it weren't for your ability masking this, I would have never shown you my true Shikai. And he was like, even if it meant defeat, and then Yumichika responds, even if it meant death. And he acknowledges verbally, he's like, oh, that's like what does he say in response? I know it's like an affirmative acknowledgement. Like it's like, oh, that's like respectable. Like so he gets before his defeat, he gets a glimpse of Yumichika's inner beauty, something that he scoffed as absent from him. So it was, it's a cool little callback to the beginning of the fight, at the end of the fight. Something I also picked up on there is a little something. That's about the only thing I picked up, other than the fight was a lot more entertaining than I remember. But yeah, cool stuff.
But yeah, no. So what I was thinking about the fight also, because the colors are so. Fuji Wisteria is like a shade of purple. It's actually the same. Fujitora is also named for the same color in One Piece. He also mentions Azure, which is so. The true name of his sword is Blue. So I'm wondering, because the fact that he hides his true self, and I'm wondering if maybe is Blue supposed to be like his sadness, like does he have some unaddressed like grief basically. The question is, I don't think we ever find out, because he's another one of those characters who I don't remember his resolution if he gets anything. So
I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
Yes, because
same
I still,
with from what I understand,
yeah.
Remember, same with Ikaku after this, right? Like,
actually, no, Izuru. I think someone mentioned that Izuru gets something in Thousand Year Blood War, but it is
he does,
funny.
And I kind of remember it a little bit. He gets like zombified or some shit, and like comes.
Yeah, I remember that. I don't remember anything else. But it is funny to think of. It's like, because the Pillar Squad is like Hisagi. He's the main character, can't fear your own world, because he didn't get his resolution in Thousand Year Blood War, and Ikaku and Yumichika also didn't get their resolution. So it's like the Pillar Squad, Kuma forgot us, sad face, like that. Not really, but it's like he wasn't able to deliver, and it's really sad. But I still I brought up with Yumichika how the fact that he is more feminine, and as a member of Squad 11, there's a toxic masculinity thing with him, so he hides away his true self basically, and is only able to reveal it in darkness, and that's also what how he wins basically, because Charlotte gives him a space where he can be vulnerable in a sense, maybe perhaps again if it's meant to be grief that he's hiding, but again we never get that resolution, and maybe it's dropped somewhere, because again there's so much supplemental Bleach material that I'm just remembered. It's I haven't actually read it, so maybe we find out more of his backstory, and or maybe we find out later in the manga, because I sometimes just don't remember shit that's stated outright, like I mentioned with Nnoitra, and the way his relationship with women really just says it right, because I forgot about it last time. So yeah, I don't know. I
can't believe you forgot that too, because it's a very iconic panel.
It's a big panel. I don't know how I forgot it, but it was more. I think it was more someone else not thinking it was the case and being doubtful that I was maybe it was more subtle than I remember. And it's no, it's just stated outright.
Yeah, it's just this there. Yeah. I encountered something like that very recently, but with One Piece. Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah, I like this Yumichika fight, and the fact that he would literally die, then just let this part of him be revealed basically,
Yeah.
So I liked it. It makes me more curious about Yumichika as a character, and it's just unfortunate because I don't know that we get what I'm looking for.
Dude, so. I'm pretty confident that we don't get pretty much anything for him that expands him after this. I'm pretty damn sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure I'm
Please,
right.
I'd love to know more, because we've had two Yumichika fights, and I especially the first one, I was surprised at how much more I got out of it, and just it made me rethink an aspect of Bleach I hadn't thought about before, and this one I think I feel mostly the same I did about it before, but I still like it, and I still like the conflict that we get out of it. So yeah, Yumichika's one of those minor characters of Bleach. I'm yeah, Yumichika, let's go. But because in comparison, I don't think I have that with Hisagi or Izuru, even though I do like these fights. I already kind of talked about what I got out of Hisagi's fight, with the fear basically, or fearing not having any fear.
And I think you pretty much covered the important things there. So.
And I don't know. We'll talk more about Hisagi later, because I'm pretty sure he's pretty relevant in the fight against Tosen, because it's even brought up how the teachings he uses he got from Tosen. He's still valuing that connection even if Tosen's turned away from Soul Society. But I'm pretty sure that comes in later.
Yeah, and that is really worth stating, because he's taken the morals of the lesson. He's taken, he's really embodied Tosen's lessons by putting more emphasis on them than than the teacher himself. Mm-hmm. Like the ones who taught him that lesson, he's putting higher than Tosen, given that he's still adhering to it, which is really cool to see. Because he truly believes in those lessons. It doesn't matter necessarily who they came from, as long as they're resonant with him, and you know he can find strength and conviction in them. It's cool. It's cool. Whereas on the opposite spectrum, well, no, not even. No, not even. Because Izuru, actually, you see the same with him. He's still adhering, even after Gin betrayed the Soul Society. Izuru is still adhering to Squad 3's whole ideology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which now that you mention it, he's also taking Gin's. I didn't think about that in comparison, where it's like, Hisagi's taken from Tosen, and Izuru's taking from Gin. So they're fighting against them, but they're still valuing what they got.
Interesting. Yeah.
And of course, I just Izuru, like the way he treats battle and violence, of just like a warrior should never beg for his life, because when you raise a sword, you're putting your life on the line, and like he doesn't like it. Like it just really fits like the idea of the weight. And like he literally makes his opponents feel the weight of what they're doing, because it weighs him down so much. He hates it.
This might be a hot take. Out of all the fights, his was my favorite too. Because, that whole the dialogue at the end of him explaining his ability, like it looks like people are literally bowing, asking for forgiveness, because conflict should be feared because of its like brutality and all that stuff, and we should avoid it at all costs. And just that final line is so sexy. Just promise me you'll never forgive me. And into the sword sheath, and then you get like the black with the sheath. Like, oh god, the presentation by Kubo, the line.
Even before that, when like when he cleans the blood off his blade first, and you just get that like the circle of blood being spilled from his sword, and just I don't know. And like I mentioned before, I like this the way Kubo draws blood. I like this page in particular. I'm just seeing like, because it's not a glob of blood. Like there's areas, there's shading to it. There's areas where there's less blood, and then there's areas where there's more blood on his sword, right? Or just the way that like I just really appreciate it. Again.
It's unfortunate that we don't get much more from Izuru after this, if I'm remembering correctly. That is because
he gets a fight.
Out of all the assistant captains, he's like my favorite right now.
He's great. He does get a fight in Fullbring, but he doesn't. He doesn't get the resolution to his arc, because I think one of the comments even talked about how like his Bankai seems very incomplete, and it matches who he is, because it's like it's slow to start, and I forget what the other point they made was, but like. It kind of like because I think Hitsugaya also has an incomplete Bankai, like there, so it's like it's like right there. It's all the setup is there. We just don't get that final fight he gets where he just like achieves his true Bankai and beats one of the Quincy's, and he decides like he pulls off his limiter, right? And like we don't get that, and even though like we get another fight with him at least, but unfortunate. But I also like his I think Ida, or no, what's the name of the guy in the sunglasses who like has a conversation about pride and duty, where it's like Ikkaku is putting his pride before his duty, and letting the pillar fall when really he needs to become strong so that he doesn't have to sacrifice one or the other. Good conversation.
Really good stuff. Yeah. Other than that, not really much to say for me about the Ikkaku stuff. Komamura is pretty cool in that. I like just Komamura's reaction to that. He's like, unfortunately, my ears are, they're not hearing today. That's funny. It's cool. It's a cute little moment.
Komamura is good too.
What else? Is there any more on this specific section?
No, I think it moves out from because I don't have any more to say.
I guess other than like Yamamoto, like fucking. Or wait, no, that happens after.
I was moving on because Yamamoto. We get a few more different fights, because we get Rangiku fighting the Halabel's Fractions. I probably mispronounced that, but because that's where we get the fucking Ion being really fucking. I like some of the interactions like with Rangiku, like. deliberately pissing off the girls so that they're like, you know, and she's like, this is fun.
She's so fun. Yeah, it's fun to tease them. Yeah, that was funny. Growl, Ash Cat. Yeah, I like her technique too.
And also, I don't know, how do you feel about Omaida's fight with the mammoth guy? Because I feel like, I don't know, what do you have? Did you have anything to say about it, or?
Not really, no.
Okay, because I just thought,
the least engaging part for me. I don't know,
okay, yeah, that's what I was expecting you to say about more of the fight. So I'm glad. I don't know. I really just appreciate hearing you going like, oh yeah, I wasn't into this before, but I'm more into it now. Like I generally like hearing, you know, that's good to say, but it makes sense that you know, that's not always going to happen. I don't know. What I think is neat about Almeida is just because like, he's afraid, he's full of fear, I guess, and especially the way that the like Soifon talks about, like, because when she was in danger, she said, you know, don't see the loss of a comrade as an opportunity to stab the enemy in the back, right? Like, because he tried to protect her, so his fear is driven by this like fear of loss, but it's like kind of I just thought it was interesting that it's not in line with how Squad 2 operates, basically.
Yeah, his character is very interesting in totality with his dynamic with I know her name.
Soifon.
Soifon, yeah. Jesus, I don't know why I'm blanking her name. But yeah, his dynamic with Soifon is like really, really funny and just cool. Because this, I'm not gonna use this as an opportunity to extend the conversation more than this, but for right now, because we'll talk about it later. But even that one scene, because getting the establishment early on in this part is very, because this is what I love about this section. It's not all monotonous for me, that fight, because getting more and more of that relationship with him and Soifon and that dynamic is paramount to really feeling something. For me, it was like, ooh, like shit's going down when you see Yoruichi, like she's like screaming when number 2 fucking gets her arm and she's just like screaming at him and she's like, cut my arm now, you want me to die, fool? It's like, oh shit, like, oh my god, like if she's like unnerved, you know shit's going down, because she's showing the, you know, sort of his side right now, where it's usually on the opposite coin, he's the one usually freaking out and stuff. But yeah, it's just really cool to see that that establishment is really paramount to really feel something in scenes like that where Soifon is kind of taken off balance. But I don't really have much to say.
I'm fine with it. I don't love it, but I just think, again, like I mentioned earlier, I just think it's really interesting that Kubo would give such focus on a minor character, like, you know, him not only getting a fight of his own, but also like being relevant is Soifon stuff after this is like, I don't know, it's just, you know, because he just feels like a character, like it'd be like you know, I'm just trying to think of like a good example of just like like in One Piece, like fucking NA's lobby, like fucking Poly, not even Poly, but like fucking like Tilestone gets a full on fight with someone in CP9 when it's like he's not going to join, and but also it has this like, you know, like I don't know, it's just like that's how tertiary Omaida feels to the story, and so I just really find it interesting that Kubo would give that level of like conflict to him. So it's neat.
Yeah, it's entertaining. I'll say that. Anything else to cover?
You know, I don't think I have much to say, because like Soifon gets like a little fight with one of the with the Sabertooth guy.
The fractions, yeah.
But I don't have much to say about that, because I already talked about it a bit with just how Omaida like differs from Soifon's ideal.
Yeah.
We do get Hinamori coming in. That's I don't know. I had something to say about that. If you don't,
I definitely did not write anything about it. So shoot.
So yeah, because because she just like comes in to help Rangiku, and she's like, it's easy to forget that she's actually really fucking competent and strong, right? Because like I remember in the flashback chapter with Renji and Izuru, she was the one who moved first. Like her one like Achilles heel is just her relationship with Aizen. Like, of course, Rangiku mentioning that like she's still calling him captain, but and like that, you know, the fact that she's the one who gets impaled by Hitsugaya later because of Aizen's illusion, right? Like she's just, you know, she can't overcome her love of Aizen basically, but like outside of that, like here she is just fucking kicking ass against the Arrancar with Rangiku. Like, holy shit. I just thought it was interesting to see that sort of difference with her, because
and like her fucked up mental state also doesn't hinder her capacity for benevolence either. Even with the scene, like she's like, Izuru, don't look over here, like heal Rangiku, please, like don't fucking worry about me. She's good. She's like a really, really competent and really kind character. And you get to see that. And it's great that Kubo highlights her as such here. And I think it's really, really necessary to do that to make us feel more when she's ultimately stabbed in kind of a similar fashion again because of Aizen's manipulation.
And there's also a little scene where Gin's like, "Are you all right, Aizen?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's a trifle of little importance, but like, of some importance, a small amount of importance, but it's like, so like Hinamori clearly does matter to him to a degree, because it's like, again, he wants her to surpass him and surpass her feelings of him, but she just won't, right?
Yeah, but since she hasn't, he sees her, he doesn't see her as much of anything. Whereas it's a complete opposite with Gin, where Gin completely acknowledges his attachment to Izuru. And it's kind of
I love that line earlier,
betrayal. Where he's like, "Oh, I'm just so happy that Izuru seems to be, in good shape."
Which again, it seems like sarcasm, but no, it's not. Just
it's true. It's just like what he says to Rangiku, where you can completely, if you think he's just a traitorous fuck back then, like, you're gonna read that and go, "Oh, he's just being good," but no, all of it's honest. Even his words to Rukia, all the way back there, were genuine help. Like, it's not until that revelation that you fully, in retrospect, can look at it and go, "Oh, the entire time, like, he wasn't being a snake. He was being honest about it all." It's cool. Again,
I also like going forward a little bit, Stark and Shinsui's like dynamic of just like, I'd rather just play around. Like the fact that a lot of Shinsui's attacks and stuff are they're based off of like children's games, I'm pretty sure. I think I think he has I forget the exact, but I just remember that. So it's like he literally just wants to play around and do nothing, but no, he's got to fight, and they're just kind of like Stark's just lazy, and it's good.
And it's so funny how fucking Shunsui delegates his best bud to fight the fucking little girl. He's like,
and he's like, "No, I don't want to fight you. You're just a child. You should be at home playing with your dolls." And she's just like, "Oh, you motherfucker."
It's a funny little dynamic. It's almost kind of ironic too, because this is a guy that's super debilitated versus he's not versing like an actual child. This is like in a rhyme car. It's a completely different it's completely different from your typical thoughts of what a child entails, right?
Which might be stunted by society in the first place, because like Rukia, for instance, she's 150 years old. She's a child, right? She's a fucking
to him, she's a child.
Exactly. I mean, even like the way the way she, like the fact that she's introduced being like, "I'm a soul reaper, I'm important," like she's kind of using her position to put herself above in a childish way, because there's lack of like security there, right? So it's and just like the fact that she has such a dynamic with like teenage characters, I think like in Soul Society terms, she is a teenager, right? That's just how it's hard for me not to think of her that way, even if again she's 150 years old. So
also not super relevant to any of this. I just find it kind of funny. Me and one of my friends, we like to do this thing where if we're both privy to a series, we'll like to liken each other to specific characters in the series. One of my friends just told me, he's like, if we're talking about Bleach, I think you're Stark, bro. You're just Stark. And I can kind of see that. Like, I'm kind of like him too. I don't give a fuck about a lot of things. Like, yeah, I can see that. I'm lazy as fuck too. That's just funny, because I always say one of the things I always say is my self-insert is Urahara, but whenever he said, "Bro, you're Stark," I was like, I can probably see that more, that I'm like Stark.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was even thinking about how that's kind of like an important aspect to Bleach, in a sense of just like, I don't know, I was just thinking about earlier about how like, Aizen doesn't understand himself, right? Like, even though he literally like broke down his fears, picked out a strong espada that like match his fears and like connect to him in a certain way, and like that was like a whole thing. But ultimately, he still fell victim to his fears. In his attempt to overcome them, like he was literally like appears to literally have been trying to overcome his fears, and just like I was thinking about that again, that scene from last time with Rangiku and Yumichika, like seeing the other better than they see themselves. Like you kind of need an outside perspective to best understand yourself, because like there are some aspects of yourself you're going to be completely blind to. So so I just your conversation made me think of that, because I think
I'm so glad I could bring that out of you off like a kind of a nothing burger that I expected that to be.
I think I had something to say about that with Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, I think.
Okay. Nice.
But maybe or maybe just the fact that like I don't know, because like Ichigo fights his foes and understands himself, so like through fighting they understand each other better. So like because I even mentioned like way back when with the horoscopes, Ichigo was saying the kind of things Ulquiorra would say, like, oh, horoscopes aren't real, they're just made up by people, right? Like that's the same, so
true.
Yeah, but anyway, that's a little later, and I don't. Before that, there was stuff with Aion, which again he brutally fucking rips apart Rangiku, and I did have one contrast with him and Yamamoto I was thinking about, because again it's another like he's a younger, because the way Yamamoto describes him as just a monster, right? Like just a beast of violence. I was just kind of thinking like, oh, is that what Yamamoto was like in his past when he was younger? Of just like, because he took control of Soul Society through violence, right? So I just thought of like,
and even looking at, dude, that's a good catch, because even looking at, I don't know if you've seen it, but Kubo had illustrations for all of the first generation captains that started the Soul Society. All of them look like devious fucks, like fucking like marauder motherfuckers, like. That ties in very well to what you're saying now. It could very well be the case. This could be coming from experience. Yamamoto's words here. That's
exactly. Yeah. Which ties into the experience versus inexperience angle that I see with a lot of these fights. So, because a lot, like with Charlotte, it's like, Yumichika's flawed, but like he understands his flaws to a degree, like where Charlotte is like he like I said, his ideals on ugliness fall apart, and he just falls back onto violence because he's still lacking, right? So and again, it's just like the art with Yamamoto just and the flames is just so it's so good.
The fire, can't wait for that chapter. The fire.
And with the girls, even just like, I'll just singe you a little bit. You're just being dumb children. I'm gonna just kick your,
Like, I mean, his is just so iconic. It's one of the only ones I still remember in Japanese. Ryujin Jaka. Right?
So I'm looking ahead, and I think because we get a little bit more fighting. Aside from Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, do you have anything to say? Because I feel like these fights don't finish, so I don't have that much to say about them.
I do not either. So
okay, so actually, it's not a 4-hour episode, because I don't think we're going to spend an hour and a half talking about Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. As good as it is, don't get me wrong. Let's. We could finally talk about Ichigo versus Ulquiorra.
Okay, before we touch specifically on Ichigo and Ulquiorra, this is within the fight. But I have to question. This might be a Lubo moment, guys. Bear with me now. First of all, I find it really funny and kind of charming that Uryu's interjection. He interjects twice in various fights back to back. The first one here is with Yami when he's about to fucking squash Orihime. You see him. It's this really epic shot where Uryu is right behind him, like he's kind of he's airborne with bow drawn, all that stuff. I noticed actually, since I read this in the same stretch, that same position he's in is just flip flopped, and it's the same pose and everything. Oh. And he's doing it behind Ulquiorra the next time. And I was like, oh, I guess it's kind of like Uryu's thing. It's like his MO move. Like, hey, this is going to be my sneak attack pose kind of thing. Like, it's funny that I caught that. I don't know if that was intentional by Kubo or not, or if Kubo was just like, oh, I need to.
Because he definitely likes those sort of like big characters. Like I remember with Urahara's like artificial little girl show, and Urahara in this reading even does it with Aizen. I'm pretty sure in Turn Back the Pendulum. Yep, so there's definitely like a recurrent like.
I mean, literally in the same fight, Ulquiorra and to Ichigo.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's because it is like. Really, yeah, no, absolutely. Like they just appear behind him, and it's really it looks cool. So, but
yeah, but,
just mean that he does
I
it
did
twice,
notice it's like literally the exact same. It's literally just like mirrored. It literally looks like the same panel, just mirrored in terms of.
That's because that's possible. Like, because I mean, because I will say about that because I think I talked about it before, but I just in general I try not to look negatively on creators taking shortcuts because
this is by the way I need to caveat this. This is not the Lubo moment I was about to say. This is a small tangent before I get into the Lubo moment.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, because I think like reusing reusing panels is pretty common. I think actually it's really interesting because Oda actually mentions that he specifically doesn't do it. Like when he flashes back to stuff, he'll redraw it. Basically, I remember
wouldn't do that shit
because I feel like that's incredibly rare. I feel like in most manga I see when they like Naruto has a couple of great pages that are mostly like collages of older panels, right? Like they're still effective and good, but obviously like there's also like a dissonance that occurs. Like I remember there's one color spread during the war or post-war that time period of One Piece where it's like. You see Luffy beating all the Straw Hats for the first time, and you can really see how his art style has changed, right? Like, so it's just, so that'll happen because of the but that's like, again, that's rare. And there's a moment in the Katama manga, I remember there's one chapter where it's literally just like an Odin stall guy just talking to characters who are supposed to think are some of the main characters, but they aren't. It turns out the twist at the end is that they aren't. But like, I just remember that the way that chapter is framed is interesting because it's like every page is 4 panels and they all have the exact same border of the stall. The only thing that changes in each panel is the dialogue and the pose of the Odin stall guy. And like, even though there's a shortcut there in that, like he's literally only drawing one character 4 times on a page, and everything else is until like the last page. But it's an artful way to take a shortcut, right? Where in comparison, like, if Kubo literally reused a drawing of Uryu and just flipped it, like that's a little unfortunate. But also, it's like considering the demands of weekly manga,
to me, it was for
sure. I just wanted to bring it up. I just wanted to bring up my thoughts again because in
the middle of talking about the actual Lubo moment, I remembered I thought that.
Okay, go but anyway, so go ahead with the quote unquote Lubo moment that.
So Uryu's plan to like send Mr. Yami guy falling. I immediately thought, wait, Yami's in a Ron car. Why doesn't he just fly? Like this trap. See, like how does this trap work? Like can't Yami fly? That's what I immediately thought of.
Well, because that's a good question. Because like I know that in general, like there's the technique. I forget how they explain it, but basically like you use reishi to like you stand on your spirit energy, right? Like that's how because we see it a lot in the Fate Car Kuratown stuff where all the Arrancar are just they're standing on the sky basically, right? And fighting in the air.
So they're not like technically flying, right?
Right. So, but the question is like, okay, is Yami just not capable of that? Because he's just, I mean, if there's an Arrancar who can't do that, like Yami just being about brute strength, like, but again, you're right. It's not explained. I don't think. Maybe it is somewhere, but I never thought about that. But it does make sense that
reading
like
an explanation that he like disturbed the reishi under him with his ability. There's no explanation like that. It was just
right
because but I'm remembering. I feel like Yami was like flying kind of in when his first appearance. I feel like he was in the air at least at one point. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look through it.
I thought when he fought Urahara, there was at least at one point he was in the air. But maybe I'm tripping. And
I can't believe. Kubo made a mistake.
Yeah, and I have to point it out because I'm an asshole. But
no, it's fine. And obviously, like narratively, it's like he's just he needs to be removed from the fight, right?
I mean, I'm gonna be frank. As a storyteller, these things I pick up on better than anyone else. I feel like because these are things I'm constantly thinking about my own story because I hate things that take people out of the story that make people question them. I want anyone to always be immersed, so I'm constantly thinking like, does this make sense? Does this make sense? Does this make sense? And
it's funny you mentioned that because I just thought about how in one of my Danganronpa fan fictions, in the second one there was of a trilogy, it was a place with a lot of like ladders and like stairwells, basically stuff with vertical movement. And I remember every time it came up, I had to be aware of like, okay, which characters are like in skirts. One of the male characters was in like a yukata, so I had to be aware of like. Because, like, who's looking up and getting fucking junk shoved in? Like, I think that I only addressed it, like, once, but every time it happened, I was very aware of, like, what the marching order was, because I wanted to be, like, I didn't want it to come, I'm putting a lot of thought into something that no one gives a shit about, right? So I understand where you're coming from of noticing this, right? Enough, exactly, right. So, in this case, sometimes you have to make concessions, like I remember there being, sometimes like weird things that logically don't make sense happen because of like I think I remember some conversations about the DC animated universe Justice League and Justice League Unlimited where like there's this one really strong character they wrote out of a fight this one time because like he can't just end the conflict, right? Or why doesn't Green Lantern just put all the enemies into a ball and shoot them off into space? And it's like, because that would be boring, right? So just I don't know. I get where you're coming from though, because it's definitely like why couldn't Yami do that? I hadn't
like even when it comes to stuff like that, I try to just either avoid powers like that or just explain like there's a character reason for why they don't do certain things. Like I don't know. I'm probably a little bit too hard on myself there, honestly, because I feel like I think probably a little bit too much about that. Maybe, I don't know. It's just something that I noticed in other stories since I'm so anal with myself about it. I want everything to flow, I want everything to make sense.
Yeah. I mean, even one way like something like that comes up in Bleach because I just remember people talking about how it's like because the characters hide their trump cards until like there's a meme where it's like if a character is the last one to use their Bankai in the fight, they're probably going to win. But Hitsugai even has a line in this reading about how it's like, why would you reveal your, trump card early or something like that? I forget his exact line, but he addresses that, right, in the story of just like, it's smart to reveal your tactics late, like, you don't want to lay your hand out first, right? So,
it is funny because I subliminally always think that too. Like, they did a power at first, they lose. Like, I do that myself, so that's funny. Well, even in like just in shonen in general, that's like always what I think. It's kind of a trend that extends beyond Bleach, which is funny. But anyway, Ulquiorra time, right?
This fight's really fucking good. I still love it a lot. It's I just really like Ulquiorra and like the way like his volume poem works into. I just love how there's the volume where it's like it goes through the 7 sins and like for the most part they tie to what happens in the chapter. There's one I didn't get. Like for the greed, you have Yami and Ulquiorra both being like, I want to fight Ichigo. But ultimately, Ulquiorra is the greedier one because he specifically wants to fight Ichigo, where Yami just wants to fight because he starts going after the two Loli and Menoli, right? Like he's less greedy about fighting Ichigo. Then I think like the pride, or Ulquiorra only shows off his second form resurrection when Ichigo shows off everything that he has, right? Like he's like he's deliberately saving his final power up for when he thinks like it's the final power up because he's like trying to crush Ichigo down with his logic and just like let me hold on. What were the other ones? Obviously the envy is like the longest because ultimately like, or maybe it's a lust. Where it's like because he desires to have a heart, right? Like that was kind of what the poem of volume 40 was about.
Yeah, and I think even the the volume is literally called the lust, right? Yeah.
Yes. So because I have a heart, I lust for all that you are. Was the line, and it's really good. I'm trying to remember the other ones. Oh, I think the envy the envy was the first one maybe with where he was talking with hold on, let me go through the chapter again. The gluttony was the one I did not get what the how it tied to Ulquiorra's character. But
I wish I paid more attention to the chapter titles in respects to what was happening in the chapters, and I might have an answer to that.
Oh! I just realized what the envy is, because the chapter ends with Orihime putting up her shield to save Ichigo, when obviously Ulquiorra's been saying the whole time is, Orihime, you're my comrade, right? And so there's a reason to be envious of Ichigo, because Orihime is the one who, he wants Orihime to like agree with his point of view, but also like, he's never not said they're comrades, right? So so there's the envy. What was the wrath again? I guess wrath is like because he just meets, because Ichigo he's like using his Getsuga Tensho and thinking of it like that. Oh, that's he's different from Hollows, so Ulquiorra sort of shows his anger by using his technique and showing how similar it is to the Getsuga Tensho, basically. So I get what sloth was. Oh, interesting. Okay, so originally I wrote down, like, last time I read it, that Ichigo is the sloth because he let his guard down. But then I was thinking, because, like, Ulquiorra is still following Aizen's playbook, basically, right? Like, he specifically leaves Los Noches because it's like, well, we're not allowed to use our Resurrection inside, right? Like, and then, like, the fact that he's the fourth Espada, like, he's completely being, in line with Aizen's system, so there's slothfulness there, right? He's not changing or doing anything, right? So
yeah, interesting, nice.
I think that's all of them. Except for gluttony, which again I did not understand how that one tied to his character in that chapter.
Yeah, I'm glad you wrote all that down, because I noticed the chapter titles, but I don't know. I was sick while I was reading all this stuff, and I only wanted to ever write so much, so I didn't dig into that. Hopefully, that's really cool. That's really cool what Kubo did there. Maybe someone will dig more into that in the comments.
Oh no, I'd love to hear some additions or alternate takes, or especially someone. Well, because the thing about I've been thinking about it, because just in general, I remember some discussion about the sins where someone arguing that like, oh, gluttony, greed, and envy are all the same thing, and it's like, if you squint your eyes, maybe, but even then, it's just like you can define them different ways. Is the thing, like, it's not just about like what does like sloth mean. It's like, well, how is sloth being interpreted, right? Because like in this reading, it's like it's deciding, seeing something wrong like systemically and not going against it or changing it, right? Or like he's being continuing to be just accept Aizen systems in a sense, right? But yeah, like because I think I guess another example of like sins in a Japanese work of fiction, ReZero also deals a lot with them, and it's very like and as I think about it, it's definitely, when going into ReZero, it's definitely like, okay, well, how is this author interpreting the sins, right? Because I don't know, so it's just something I could be curious as to what other people have to say about it, because it's just a little neat detail of the fight. There's me, maybe I hope Askin wasn't like, oh man, I can't wait to talk about these chapter titles during the fight, and it's like, oh, Craftstorm already talked about most of it. It's like, no, because Askin's always been bringing up the chapter titles, which I really appreciate. But
yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
Stuff I don't notice right away generally.
What are some things you noticed about the fight that you liked?
First off, right off the bat, the word to awaken his resurrection in prison. Both his power and his words mimic this sentiment. Like one of his quotes: "No matter how much of our power you have, you will never be as powerful as us Arankars. You can't win. It's futile." And like he has devastating power to back up these words. Both his power and his harsh words act as weighty chains levied toward his victims. A cold, calculated fighter. However, it's when Ichigo seems unaffected by his presence that Ulquiorra displays an uncharacteristic side of himself. He gets frustrated. So much so, he is even provoked to go into a second stage resurrection when it's actually unnecessary. It's very impractical to go to a second stage resurrection, given how dominant of a force he is already. It's just needless. It's unnecessary. It's illogical. Yet he does it because he's provoked emotionally. That heart somewhere deep down has always been there. He can't. It's simply that he can't see, so he can't understand it. He can't acknowledge what's not reflected in his eyes, as he said. So he can't understand another power called the heart that allows Ichigo to still hold his sword despite the overwhelming odds. Yet this again provokes Ulquiorra's own heart that he hasn't been able to acknowledge yet and see. It's cool. But I just had a lot to say, given off the rip the imprison, that word to summon his power, imprison. It was really resonant to me. But yeah, that's that off the bat. But a lot of the other stuff I have to say is more toward the end of the fight and tied to the one shot we read. For those who haven't read it. So if you have anything in between all that stuff, I'd go ahead, because I don't want to get too.
I'm just trying to look through my notes and see if I have anything to say on my way there. Because obviously more with Orihime and Ichigo, because Ulquiorra is trying to distill humans to rule, because he wants everything to make sense, right? So he tries to think of think rationally and distill humans to rules and think, because with Orihime, he asked a question of why didn't you intervene earlier, right? Because she only intervened when he did and not before then, and obviously the reason is because she wants to respect Ichigo's wishes and not intervene, but in that moment her emotions took over and she did. And Ichigo even says it's dangerous, take cover. He's pushing her out of the fight, right? He only wants to fight Ulquiorra one-on-one, right? Also unrelated, but I think Uryu, when he knocks Yami down and he says a line in Spanish, I just think that's really cool. Because I don't know, just something of him appropriating the language that the Arrancar often use is just.
While also being the fucking nerd, like push his glasses up, hey, this is what I learned.
It's such a power move. I love it. I do.
It's very Uryu for sure.
Because and you mentioned Ulquiorra getting frustrated. I really like that moment just because it's he's having an emotion, right? He cares about this. It's his humanity's cracking. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I generally I also like this with Sai and Naruto. But it's I've noticed a fondness I have for specifically characters grappling with their emotions that they haven't had, or their humanity basically. And Ulquiorra is that to a T, of just he is this non-human trying to reconcile with humanity, and just he figures it out, and and it gets me every fucking time. I love it, always love it to see it. Just that him having that moment of frustration is just because I possibly read it as because again Ichigo he continues to fail to understand these people and their emotions, and because Ichigo is still fighting him, so I wonder if maybe part of it it's a fear, right? A fear of that which he does not understand.
We fear that which we cannot see.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Exactly. That's a much better way to put it. Yeah. Because again, he doesn't see
volume 1, everyone.
Yep. He's afraid of the heart. Exactly. And then hold on, I'm reading one of my notes. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Take your time, man.
And yeah, because again, he also fears nothingness, like death and the ultimate nothingness, and so I think that he can't comprehend Ichigo being willing to his fear, overcoming his fear of death. Basically, he's willing to put everything and risk death on to save Orihime, because it hurts. Him losing Orihime hurts worse than him losing himself, basically. And just because he has the line for having a heart, you will pay the ultimate price. And it just got me thinking of that aspect.
Just something you made me think about by talking about his fear again, the fear of nothingness. It's really interesting that he even harbors such a fear, given his outlook on existence itself should be synonymous with the idea of nothingness. If truly nothing matters, if truly this purpose. I mean, he's rooted in just nihilism. That's what he is. He's just a nihilist.
And that is kind of the there's a meme that captures it really well where it's I think it's like a crying face from the boss baby. You've probably seen example but it's like nihilists where when you kill their dog suddenly something matters to them, right? Where because nihilism is inherently because I personally
he depicts it perfectly because for a guy who should already be immersed in nothingness, why would he fear it, right? It's because he's not. It's because deep down he's yearning for something, and he can. While he might not be directly looking at it, his peripheral vision is constantly spotting something that he can't quite home in on. And what is it? It's the heart. And this is depicted, and I'll get into this because I have a lot to say on the ending stuff in relation to
the one shot,
to his one shot.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the one shot too, but
I'll depicts this visually with the black and white stuff. So we'll get into that.
But, the last page. Good.
Yeah.
Also, just another thing about this fight in general is just the expression work. Like again, Kubo's art is always good, but just like the Orihime's faces she makes, there's so many just good subtle expressions or even direct ones. It's just like they're all so varied and like I'm looking at when Orihime or Ichigo gets like a fucking hole shot through his chest and Orihime's fucking fear and just terror at the idea of losing Ichigo, and it's just and her sadness, her sadness after right after that, and then later on it's just good.
The expressions, especially in that sequence, are fucking crazy. Yeah, really good, really good artistry by Kubo, brilliant stuff. Yeah.
And then, of course, just the fact that she breaks down because I don't know, I just think of it as again she's being coddled constantly. So just the idea, the fact that she can't handle this emotionally is because she's actually a good example of why Aizen's ideals matter. Come to think of it, in that again people have to reach for something themselves to become strong, become strong enough to reach for something themselves rather than have it handed to them. Because Orihime has been protected by others, she hasn't been able to find the strength to protect herself. And so she's having to go through all this pain, basically because because of that lack and because of what she's been given by Sora and Ichigo and all these other characters who have been putting themselves going out of their way to protect her because they don't think she can do it herself. When again, she's the strongest shield. She has the capability. She's just not being nurtured to take hold of it, right? So in a way that kind of is what I Aizen's kind of right in that area because she hasn't been given what she needs. So
and just not related to what you're saying more visually. I want to touch on some of the visuals. And
please, I'm just scrolling through them again, and they're so fucking peak.
I really think that this section, this little just this fight, has just the most back-to-back hyper impressive panels in the entire series. The first one that comes to mind, I'm not even looking at this shit as we've been talking. I never do. I'll remember certain panels and it just strike me. One of the ones is Ulquiorra when his first resurrection and he's in front of the moon. Mm-hmm. It's just so majestic.
Iconic. Holy fuck.
Yeah. The next one, and so this is an example of certain times that the panel is visceral enough. My mind will register a sound effect.
Yes.
One of the ones that when I was still sick, I was sitting there, but God, did it kind of awaken my mind whenever Ichigo first, not first, when he goes into hollow form, when he's fighting Ulquiorra finally, Kubo goes off on the art, and so he kind of goes downward in his he's putting his hand over his face to put it on, and then he fucking in a very aggressive manner kind of sweeps his hand away and then looks upward and in one motion, almost like he's ripping his mask on. That's the most clearly I can explain it in words. It's like he's aggressively ripping on a mask, if that even makes any sense. But I attributed a sound effect to it when I read it. It was almost like a banshee screaming. It was
yes,
that's what my mind automatically filled in noise. It was so the art was so spoke to me so much that my mind literally immediately registered like a banshee screech, and I was like, holy shit, that's a fucking That's a series of panels right there.
Yeah, to bring up a couple that I like is one is more from a visually symbolic. Right, but when he enters his first resurrection, is like not only is he covering the moon, which that like the way the moon, he's literally eclipsing Ichigo and like his fate, his future, right? But also like the way the black liquid it rains down on Ichigo. It's like because that's which is the rain being a recurring symbol in Bleach, and like there's a little panel that looks like he's standing in the rain. I remember that was explained to me a while ago. I do apologize. I don't remember who pointed that out. It might have fucking been Oskin for all I know. So, but it's just it's so good. And like I also love the title pages are like he always just knocks them out. But I think one of my favorites from this reading is the Lust 4, which is when Ichigo goes hollow. And just like the way it's like the you see the panels broken up with like Orihime's like screaming, and then just the or not screaming, but she's crying, and then you have the moon, and you have the Bleach chapter number, and then you have the little tease of Ichigo, and then the page right after that is the full 2-page spread of Ichigo's horns of I always think horns of salvation because that's what those that's what the chapter was called when Ichigo uses that form later in 1,000 Year Blood War, but this is not salvation. It's not a good salvation.
Yeah, but it's actually the horns of deprivation in this.
Yeah.
In this sequence,
and it's just so fucking good. It's like insane. I can't get over it.
Horns of depravity, I should say. Deprivation is.
And there's also, I'm sure you noticed it, but there's even the page for 352 where Ichigo has half of his face. It's literally like his form that he gets in the second to last Yubak fight, with half of his face having the horn and the other half of his face being human. And then
from my recollection, like literally, like it's so traumatizing for Orihime. Like Ichigo literally has to reassure her, from my recollection.
Yes,
right?
because
like, I'm still me. It's like, Pog, he is still him. He is him. He's him. He's him.
Insane.
There's, honestly, there's a lot I could say regarding Ichigo here, because I do in my big Ronka arc video where I cover a lot of Ichigo's character
the Ichigo versus Aizen one, right?
And I've actually, all throughout these conversations, I've avoided regurgitating anything I've ever said from that video, and I think I've done a pretty good job of avoiding it. I think I'll avoid it again here. Guys, if you want to watch my big analysis over all this shit on Ichigo's side. Because I got a lot to say about Ichigo versus Grimmjow on Ichigo's side here, but what I did is, in this podcast, is I talked only about Grimmjow. And
right.
Because you guys can go watch it if you want to. And I think we're even going to probably watch the video at the end of this stuff, and some of your videos as well. So I'm just going to save it for that. No need to repeat information that's already out there. Go watch it if you're.
Because I definitely agree. Most of summarize maybe, but generally, because maybe we'll have new observations to come off of those. But generally, it's like we're mostly talking about what new things we've gotten. I think, or in some cases, if I haven't talked about it before, because some like the Yumachika Charlotte one, I didn't get much new out of it, but it's still I haven't talked about it with you, so and there was some new stuff, I hadn't thought about the colors and the Azure representing grief, potential sadness, anyway.
So now that we're here toward the kind of ending of the fight, I find it really interesting that right after Ulquiorra admits defeat, he immediately segues into saving. He is the one who saves Ichigo's heart.
Yes.
In an illogical fashion. He's already done. He knows he's already done.
Well, the part that gets me is right before that, he even says something where it's my life has no meaning now that I've lost to you, right? Because he's been,
but there's meaning right before him that he's still unconsciously preserving to the degree that even his body reacts to it, probably without his mind even registering it fully. That's really cool. It's really fucking cool. And I think this completely solidified with his final words. Or not his final words, but some of his final words. Just when I finally started to take an interest in you people, kind of confirming that his mind has caught up indeed. Like, he understands now that, like, oh, there was something here that I couldn't home in on, but only now at the end am I able to see clearer than I had before. I think truly my interpretation is, in his final moments, what he was doing was preserving that heart that Orihime was essential in helping him discover. Because now, through her, he found his heart too. It's with her, and always will be.
Yes.
So he will live on in a sense. But yeah, really, really touching stuff.
No, like the fact that, because, how I had it put for me, again, I don't remember who, but just like, he's not able to touch the heart until he doesn't have a hand, and he's not able to see it until he doesn't have eyes anymore, right? Like, just feeding into the fact that, like,
I mean, even visually, in terms of the illustration is, Orihime becomes less and less clear to him. We see it in the panels as but the idea of her, what she represents to him, what she always represented, he just couldn't see it clearly. It's more clear than ever before. Yet physically, she's becoming less and less clear. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, no, because like literally, like the panel he says "I see" is right after she loses her eyes to him, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I just thought back to her poem, and I brought it up where it's like, if I were a rain that joins the sky and the earth that otherwise never touched, could I join two hearts as well? And she was able to join her heart with Ulquiorra, basically.
Indeed.
So,
indeed. Yeah.
God.
But yeah, tying all this into his one shot.
Yes, go for it.
So from the get go, like, in order for anything to survive, like, everything needs something from birth, like something familiar, something comfortable, in order to have a fulfilling existence. Like, that's how people learn what the heart is. From birth, Ulquiorra was met with only vitriol for his foreign form. Like, the void is all he knew. The void is all he knew, and that void itself wouldn't even accept him because it was so unlike him. Like, he was pure white. He was a white being, and everything else was darkness. But there was an opposite abundant presence that he found through taking a more human form. Happiness found by seeing glimpses of the heart. He found little traces of happiness that he couldn't quite understand. He couldn't quite immerse himself in because he didn't truly believe it was there, because he couldn't see it, because he couldn't home in on it quite clearly. Because Ulquiorra says he cannot believe what his eyes cannot reflect. Yet he constantly questions the heart. He desperately wants to understand a faint trace of something that he doesn't know is real, because behind it lies the meaning he's been seeking for his entire existence. A different kind of void, which is the pure white void of happiness found through understanding the heart and through sharing the heart with others. But I'm going to send this to you, and I think you probably caught this as well, perhaps, but I'll send it to you here, and maybe you can put it up in post-processing when you're editing this. So this is the end of the chapter, Ulquiorra's death, when he discovers what the heart is. This is what you see, and that one shot of Ulquiorra that goes into his backstory. This is what you see. So
I did not pick up on this.
So you see I picked up on this right away. So you see the dichotomy here. It's black with one white dot here, and it's white with a black dot here. My interpretation of this, when I messaged this to Radman, is both represent Ulquiorra in different voids. I took the dots as representing Ulquiorra in just a different kind of void. First is the void, well, in the order I sent to you, that's not the order I sent to him. I sent the black one first. So I said, first is the void of despair found in nihilism. Second is the void of happiness found in the heart he left with Orihime. Is what I said. So I find that really cool. How Kubo connected that visually. That idea, the two different kind of voids. I love that idea of how they're I mean, it even goes. I mean, it even goes in physics in real life. The prevailing theory, because it's been proven by math, is there's a such thing as a white hole, which is like a different kind of bottomless pit. And we haven't really been able to qualify what that would entail, and we haven't been able to find it. But mathematically, it should exist, but we've never actually confirmed its existence like a black hole. But here, again, it's like when you think of void, you almost think of like despair, of like nothingness, but whereas the void of found through the heart of happiness is like an expansive void of like serenity, you know. It's sort of it's kind of resonant with like heaven and hell sort of thing. Whereas yes, it is a void, and maybe there's no meaning at all. Yet what you leave behind, there is meaning, right? And that's why that's why it's a different kind of void, because there's meaning in that your heart still. It takes form in what you leave behind. And so essentially in his final moment, Ulquiorra transcended his fate by leaving behind his heart with Orihime. He found something beyond nothingness.
Yes.
Right. It's all very cool.
See, what I got out of that last page was more in the context of just the one shot itself, of just like I was thinking, because he's saying like, there's, what is it? There is nothing in you and in me. And that's right after a scene where he talks to Orihime and like, don't refer to me as a human, right? Where of course names themselves are a very human thing, right? To label something. But like, because he at the end of the day, he doesn't really believe that there is only nothingness, because he is constantly looking for the heart, right? The nothingness that does matter. So like, I took that little light in the dark as like what he's trying to find, because but like something more to that effect. But I like the way you read it too, though. It's really cool.
Ulquiorra has gone up in my book after that. I really liken it to Kaido's flashback. Very short and sweet, but it contextualizes so much for me. It makes me appreciate his character so much more. Which is ironic, because a lot of people diss on the Kaido flashback, but I think it's perfect. It's short and sweet, and it contextualizes everything that we need to know to inform his character. And by the way, I don't know if you've seen that video of mine, but it's literally my favorite One Piece video I made, so I highly recommend. If you watch any of my One Piece content, that should be the video.
I believe I've seen the Kaido video.
Never mind then. Fuck it. Yeah, never mind. I love that flashback, and this just reminds me of it, because honestly, I feel like this is what I've always needed for Ulquiorra, because I'm going to be frank. I do not have the same love it feels like a lot of people have for Ulquiorra, but I think I do now, and it literally this one shot gave it to me. Ulquiorra has gone way up in my book, like I said, and that's not an exaggeration. Nice. Yeah, I didn't care for him near as much as a lot of other people seemingly did. Like,
I remember we talked before, and you were a little surprised to hear that. Yeah, like, because you liked Ichigo versus Aizen, and I said my favorite fight was Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. And like I explained, it's literally just because like Ulquiorra just specifically hits on an archetype of character that like I really vibe with. And it's just it's like and again for all the other reasons I talked about, with like not even just how obviously how it factors into Ichigo and Orihime's characters is really good. But like just the art, and just I don't like, because one part I didn't mention before, because you brought up like the fact that Ulquiorra is protecting Ichigo's heart, right? Like he's literally fighting Ichigo to save Orihime and Uryu. Like specifically Uryu is interesting because that's an enemy, that's someone he doesn't actually have a connection with. Like Orihime makes sense because they're comrades, right? But another angle I thought about it from was just like because like he's. The way logic factors into his fight with Ichigo, where it doesn't make sense to him why Ichigo would do all these things, and yet here he is he's already lost. Like he was already, literally the last chapter, he was like, my life has no meaning, just kill me, right? But then he's doing immediately after doing illogical things, right? Because logic isn't ever like
he's constantly contradicting himself throughout this entire exchange.
As I kind of put it, sorry,
oh, my bad.
No, you're
interrupting
fine.
You.
Sorry. I was just gonna how I wrapped it up is like with the horoscope, logic isn't everything in the world, right? Like, or just tying it back to that. So sorry, what were you trying to say?
I would just that connects back to what I was saying earlier. How even before that, he was contradicting himself when he was provoked by Ichigo into just for no reason going into his second stage resurrection. Like he's that's just his MO. His constant contradictions and adherence to his heart that he can't see. That's somewhere. That's already been slowly but surely connecting with Orihime. He just can't see it.
Yeah, I also think his last interaction with Ichigo is interesting, where it's like he literally says, he tells Ichigo to cut him down, so that he can sort of like, or you'll never settle this, right? Because he's trying to give Ichigo some closure, but Ichigo still rejects that.
Yeah.
And how it ties to Uryu saying like, oh, you can't kill him or you'll give up your humanity, basically, right? And Ichigo is like, his humanity is that like he wants to win this specific way. But he can't get that. Like Ulquiorra isn't giving him the closure he needs because he hasn't grown enough as a person.
And not to go too into my video, but my interpretation of this scene, because I touch on that very specifically, is it's his humanity in relation to his pride, because he cares little about. Well, it's not that he doesn't care that his friends are safe, but his first utterance upon coming back to his senses is like, oh, that's unfair. It's like, well, Ichigo, like the more important thing here is that your friends weren't brutally killed when you went out of control. Yet he's more focused on how he defeated the foe in front of him, someone he was supposed to vanquish anyway, to save Orihime. So it's completely backwards. And where does it all come from? Well, it's his battle pride. And it's only so strong and apparent now because, he's been pushing it down for so long. So, anyway. But Ulquiorra is now S tier character for me too, guys.
Let's
I'm a
fucking go.
I'm a believer now. You guys got me.
Unlike Ulquiorra, haha, God, no, I'm kidding. Formerly not a believer, but it's still right now. It's my favorite fight in Bleach, but I think that's. But we have.
I still, even with this new added context I still don't think this has a chance even to eclipse my love for Ichigo versus Aizen.
Which and I feel like your opinion of Bleach has only improved, right? Like even if there's some stuff that stayed the same, I feel like overall it's like there hasn't been anything you've been like, this sucks. I brought up last time too, right? So of course you're gonna, if you feel the same about Ichigo versus Aizen, great. If anything, you're gonna like it more because there's gonna be more to talk about. So but
I will say, big caveat here is I'm hoping and expecting the final fight of Bleach to eclipse that fight for me as my favorite.
Also possible, right? Because
I'm thinking on the reread that fight will hit super differently for me, and I'll be like, it's just the best fight in Bleach ever.
As far as so technically there was more to the reading, but I feel like it's a bunch of like half complete fights. So I'll probably
ironically, because the whole idea of reading one more volume in this episode was because we didn't want to leave off on an unfinished Ichigo versus Ulquiorra, which was a good idea because that's a big fight, especially for you and your love for it. But ironically, we end before another fight ends. Like we're ending off the cliffhanger of a big fight with Toshiro and
Halibel, yeah. Well, you also have Soifon and Almeida versus Baragon happening as well.
It really does, but more so with Toshiro, it literally ends right on the big oh wow moment, like climax, like oh this fight's about to end, and like oh no volume done. It's like damn it, Kubo. Obviously, when they're releasing the chapters week to week, they don't think about all the the volumes and stuff. Like
sometimes because definitely like the fact that the Arnkar arc does end off on the volume is really convenient. But it's definitely not universal. True. So still Bleach is really fucking good. And if I read one of these fights and I feel like I don't have a major takeaway, which is definitely not going to happen for the Soifon versus Baragon, but might happen for Hitsugaya versus Halibel. But I might go back and reread some of this stuff. Just to better contextualize it for myself. But we'll see. Because I do have one note that I have bolded on my document, but I can easily bring that up next time. And it's also pretty clear, so I don't know that. Anyway, we'll figure it out. So next time we are reading up to the end. It's only 7 volumes, so it's only up to 48. So 42 to 48. because yeah, like I said, that's where the Arrancar arc ends off perfectly. So yeah.
Yeah. And I don't really have any last words for this stretch, so we'll see you guys in the next one.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening.
Bye bye, everyone.